Okay.
Who said David resigned?
Then you've got, you say you have a quorum because you've got, it's only filled members. Otherwise you wouldn't. You got 4 of 6, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's her coming in.
So I saw the traffic study guy. I'm like, oh, it's not going to be a short meeting, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I now have 7 o'clock, and I would like to call the December 18th, 2023 Planning Board meeting to order. I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. And our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next item is the invocation. If you would please bow and pray with me. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity of coming together here and meeting tonight on behalf of the town. We'd like to ask for your blessing over this meeting, and we'd like to ask for your guidance and direction in the decisions we make tonight. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Item number 3 is the approval of the October 23rd, 2023 Planning Board meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read those minutes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, here, no corrections. I'll let go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll
We
second.
have a motion and a second on the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is carried. All right, on to the regular agenda item. Yes, Meredith? You want to, or I didn't know if we wanted to enter.
We're going to shift item 1 to the end.
Yes. We have one planning board member that we haven't heard from yet. So if it's pleasure to the board, we could move item number 1 to the third on this list to hopefully achieve a quorum for that item.
Mr. Chairman, you would still have a quorum either way as you have 4, which is all
Yes.
you need for a quorum. However, given the recusal that we know we'll have on case number 1, you would be down to just 3 members to consider the topic. And normally we want to have as many as possible. That was the idea of shifting to the end. But if the board wished to, you can proceed in the order you originally had. It's not legally prohibited. It's the board's choice.
Okay.
Preference would be to move it if we can, give her a chance to show.
Yep.
Okay. Do we need a motion to move that? Or-
It's in the chair's discretion.
Okay, well, we will move item number 1 to the third on the agenda tonight, and we will move on to MA 22-08, the Harris Creek Farms proposal.
Senior planner in the planning department. This evening we have map amendment 2208 called Harris Creek Farm. Do a presentation here, and then the applicant is present. The applicant name is the CSC Group. Property owner is Ping Chen. engineer of record, Morrison Ritchie Associates. The property is just over 93 acres, compiling 19 parcels. And the request here is to both voluntarily annex and then to rezone the property from Wake County's R30 district to a mix of residential medium density and residential high density, and both of those would be conditional zoning districts. On screen here is one exhibit from the applicant's concept sketch plan showing that green area that is the residential medium district, and lavender is the residential high zoning district. General site vicinity here, to orient ourselves, Jonesville Road running north-south in this image, Mitchell Mill Road running east and west here. This property sits to the west side. This lit up property is not all of the properties, this is the largest contiguous one for this mapping purpose, west of Jonesville Road. First thing to consider here is the future land use map from the 2017 comprehensive plan. It does recommend these properties and this entire area, as you can see in this image in the orange, as appropriate for medium density residential. Real briefly to look at how the comprehensive plan describes this future land use category. This is the verbatim reference here. I thought I could go through this and kind of go a little point by point. And I'm going to start at the bottom, honestly. Form-based code provisions, the LDO does not have form-based code provisions, but when this language was written, again, this was 2017, so 6 years ago, it was before the LDO was conceived and adopted. So that is not in place today. Planned unit development no longer exists under the land development ordinance either, but again, at the time that this was written, the unified development ordinance did have zoning districts for land unit developments. So moving before that, an area with limited non-residential uses. This particular rezoning request does not have any non-residential component to it, but that would be an appropriate potential mix of uses in a medium density residential area. So really we're focusing on that it's appropriate for predominantly single-family residential with portions of various housing types, duplexes, townhomes, multi-family residential, or single-family residential detached homes. And then it calls out an approximate density range of between 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. And that does include preserved middle schools. So that is the definition in the comprehensive plan for the medium density residential. The existing zoning, again, what this is, this whole yellow area is under Wake County's development and zoning regulations. And so it's the R30 zoning. The property in pink, if you recognize that, is the project known as 5109 Mitchell Mill. It came through the board early this year, 2013, and went through 2023, and was adopted by the town board this summer. And that is, so that is the area that is in town limits at the moment in this vicinity. Here are snapshots from the LDO, the two sections where the two districts being sought, residential medium on the left, residential high on the right. So these are the core dimensional standards of how subdivision occurs within these zoning districts. This is where you get your lot size and your lot widths, density ranges. Building setbacks. We may come back to this upon some Q&A. This slide is showing you the density calculations for this proposal. We have our RM district column here and an RH district. There are two acreages of those two districts that the applicant's proposing, numbers of dwelling units in each. The gross density calculations, just under 1 dwelling unit per acre in the RM district, and that is where the developer would only build single-family detached homes. And then 2.67 dwelling units in the RH district, where townhomes are being shown to be exclusively developed. This fourth line here, the RH district has a caveat that only 15 acres of gross area can actually be developed with townhomes. So if you took just the 15-acre portion divided by the 81 proposed dwelling units, that density obviously goes up to 5.4 dwelling units. The fifth line is really just an exercise of theoretical by right density. If you took the gross acreage of each district, the theoretical minimum lot size for RM, that's 15,000 square foot, you did that math, you get 188 lots. But that's, of course, theoretical. That's not assuming dedication of roads, stormwater ponds, other things like that, open space requirements. then, excuse me, then in the RH district, again, if you took that 15-acre area that can be dedicated to the townhomes themselves, the minimum 2,000 square foot lot for an attached townhome dwelling unit is 326 lots. Again, that's very theoretical. That's not taking in a host of other development standards that would never allow that achievement of density. Across the entire property, which again is just over 93 acres, the total request is for 149 dwelling units, and that is a gross density of 1.6 dwelling units. The applicant has proposed 14 conditions of approval to go with this. The applicant will, I'm sure, be going into some detail about those commitments that are all above and beyond the minimum LDO standards for development. There are some items in 12 and 13 and 14 that may require a little more analysis or fleshing out the language before this application should go to the town board. Again, we can get into those more later if you wish to. But basically, it's committing to the project as shown in the concept plan, and then it's also some improvements such as pollinator plantings and open space, etc. The comprehensive plan, again, calls for this property to be developed under medium density residential land use, which includes a multiple housing types at less than prescribed densities. And the transportation plan calls for Jonesville Road to be improved to a 3-lane facility, and the traffic impact analysis that was performed for this project identified a number of improvements, mainly to Jonesville Road, and then to monitor status at some of the key intersections nearby. Overall staff analysis is that the existing Wake County zoning, that R30, and the surrounding land use pattern, which is very low density residential, is not consistent with what the comprehensive plan calls out for that medium density residential of between 3 and 5 dwelling units per acre. It is far less than that. The single-family detached and attached dwellings that are being proposed in this rezoning do fulfill that future land use, and the densities are more in line with the future land use, though they are actually on the low side. And then the conditions that the applicant is bringing forth are providing something greater than the minimums in the land development ordinance, and are also volunteering to construct some 2 key off-site improvements, sidewalks along Jonesville Road, and then paving of an existing access easement, known as Universal Drive. The overall staff recommendation is for approval of this map amendment to rezone from Wake County zoning to a mix of the RM and RH zoning districts, subject to those conditions of approval. And you'll be motion here for the board if they wish to make that later. And at this point, I'll turn this over to the applicant, and they have a presentation.
All right, thank you.
Can you check the microphone too, real quick, if you don't mind?
It's on now.
Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. Happy to be here again. I wanted to start off, I'm sorry, I'm Steve George. I'm with the CSC Group, who is the owner of this property. I wanted to start off with just go through the plan real briefly again. Since we were here before, I'm assuming you're fairly familiar with what the plan is, but I want to go through a couple of the highlights of it as we sit here tonight. Where's my, a couple things just wanted to point out that Michael just mentioned. The basic plan is the same as we talked about last time, with some of the exceptions that we've changed based on the comments from the previous meeting. We do have the entrance at the same location with the townhomes where they're at. We have shown on this plan, it's hard to see here, but we have shown the sidewalk extending past our property up through this property and the church property to Universal Drive. We also are showing a paving Universal Drive all the way from Gideon down to Jonesville Road. We do have, we have been talking with both these property owners. They both have verbally agreed in principle with doing this. And actually, can I pass something out? If I have it. Sure, I say that. No, I know what I do with it. Here it is. I just want to keep one of these. What I'm passing out is a letter from Mr. Alston, who is the owner of the first property, showing his support for the plan overall and the easement, granting the easement across the property. I believe there's representatives from the church here tonight, I think, who hopefully will say the same thing. Again, we have agreements with both verbally, and we're working through the process now in terms of putting together the paperwork to put those easements in place. The other thing we've changed, one of the issues that came up last one was the location of the Greenway access point, which before was back in this location. There was some expressions that we would like to get that up front more toward Jonesville Road. Because of this is somewhat squeezed up here from the dimensions, we can't get it right to Jonesville, but what we have done is we've changed the location to right here, which is about 300 feet off of Jonesville Road with a parking lot. And what we've done is we're proposing to construct another access point here. This would be a pathway, paved pathway that will go around and come to this point right here, okay, where the access to the Greenway will be then. So people can drive in, park right there, and ride their bikes, walk, whatever, right down here and get on the Greenway where it's shown. We've also talked to the town. The town is planning on putting signage right here at Jonesville in our entranceway and at the parking area so that people will know that that is where they are supposed to go to get on that Greenway. So it'll be very obvious coming down Jonesville Road. I also wanted to touch on, with this item, I saw communication from one of the neighbors regarding that there's a rumor that because of this location, that anyone coming in here who's doesn't live here would be trespassing. That is not true. Okay, that's a public road. All of this is public access. It'll be deeded public access all the way down to the Greenway. So everyone can get there and everyone can get to that point. Just wanted to point out that this, I think we talked about last time, but there is over 56, there's over a mile, it's about a mile, 1.2 miles of Greenway on this entire site, all the way to the north here, comes all the way around, as you can see, wraps around. We've got our extra one here, comes down, matches up with the Greenway coming across, and all the way to the west. A massive amount of Greenway in here. One of the issues that came up is the whole connectivity. We talked about quite a bit, but with this Greenway now stretching all the way across, all the way to the north, there's sidewalks on all of these streets, both sides of each street. We also have a pathway, if you can see my thing, right here, which comes across behind these buildings because it goes to, this is a gazebo area we're gonna have, and then this goes over here to a playground type thing and dog park right here. So connects everything so everyone can get here easily. But again, sidewalks on both sides, and now with the sidewalk going all the way down here and with the paving of this, we have complete connectivity, we believe. We also, from some of the comments from our neighborhood meeting, we also are going to put in there that we will not allow any construction traffic at all on Universal Drive as we're constructing this. And there will be no parking on the streets, on any of these streets. We'll have no parking signs up for all of this. And as you can see, we have plenty of off-street parking here, here, here. There's actually about 200 parking spaces, as I recall, on the plan. We also have, and I'll go through, we'll go through the conditions that we've approved also, or agreed to. We'll go through there, but just wanted to point out that we did add affordable housing. We are making a pledge of $35,000 to the Homes for Heroes for this project. I'm talking about another thing that came up when we met with the neighbors, where they talked about a public park. Why do we not have a public park back here? And this is something we've talked with staff about. We have no problem with some of this being dedicated. We would dedicate some of this as a public park. Our understanding is that the town, how's the best way to put it? That's not an ideal spot for the town for a park. And so we've received that is not something they're interested in doing. Is that the best way to put that?
Usable space.
Usable space, yes, yeah, because of the wetlands are right there, yeah. So, okay, if we could go to the conditions, and hopefully everybody can see this, maybe not. Yeah, can you blow that up?
Yeah, this Adobe's changed, so it's harder to see. How's that?
Yeah, perfect, yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And again, some of these were on the last one, but I just want to go, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I want to hit a couple of the bigger ones. We have agreed to an anti-monotony code. This is number 4 right here, to promote the variation in home appearance. So no single-family front facade will be duplicated for 3 lots in a row, et cetera, et cetera. Corner lots will be treated differently also. So we have agreed to that. All the garage doors will have the windows and carriage-style adornments to them. Coming down, the minimum square footage is 1,500 square feet. How does this move up and down? Oops. Bear with me. Meredith, help me here.
It's being a little finicky, isn't it?
Yeah.
I might make it a teeny bit smaller. I want that to go away. I'm just using the ruler, yeah, I'm using the ruler.
Yeah, thank you. We also, going down to the single-family section, there is no vinyl siding. I know that was an item that came up before, so no vinyl siding allowed on either of the products as we go forward. Again, articulation on the end units to meet the monotony code. So we're agreeing to all of everything that's shown there. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details, but hitting the highlights. Number 8, there will be homeowner association for all the open space, and we'll have lawn maintenance and all the maintenance for all the common areas. The foundations will all be monolithic poured slab foundations, and we will have the treated masonry siding on the 10 inches as per requested from the town.
Just a quick question on that.
Yeah.
Because you're so close to the wetlands in some of those homes, what if you're precluded from slab because of the floodplain? Like you would be a foot above the floodplain. Would you raise those and put them on column?
No, they should all be out of any danger of the floodplain where we're setting them. Is that true? Should I address that in any different way, or do you want to address it? This is Jeremy Keeney. He's with the.
I'm Jeremy Keeney. I'm with Morrison Ritchie Associates, the engineers. I would just add that, I mean, you know, adjacent to the floodplains and wetland areas, the elevation will be, you know, up such that the floodplain would not extend into any of the lots. So they would be more than a foot above the flood elevation and outside of the existing floodplain as it sits now.
Are you doing grading in that section? Because I've seen that area pretty damp.
Pads will be built up.
Yeah, yes, the grading, they will be built up as well, but they're also outside of the existing floodplain as it exists today.
Okay.
The greenway, as we mentioned before, it's over a mile of greenway that we're putting in, and plus with the private use paths that we have now added to that. As I should mention before, we do have three common area spaces. There's going to be a gazebo, sort of gathering spot in one of them. There will also be a dog park in one, and a playground type, tot lot type thing in one of those areas in that back. So moving down to number 12, which is sidewalk easement. As I pointed out before, we do have agreements with both those landowners to put that sidewalk in. So again, we're going to get that all buttoned down with those two, and that'll be part of our deal. We have agreed to have that completed by the 100th CO. Probably be done before that anyway. Same true with Universal Drive. Again, we have talked with the church. The church seems to be very excited about that in terms of getting it paved. And so we will get the paperwork on that too and get that going, and that will be done also before the 100th CO.
With that Universal Drive, when you pay, is that gonna be a normal road or just a access road? How is that gonna?
Access road, yeah. It will not be built to city road standards. It will be paved. It'll be 20-foot wide for emergency vehicles, but it'll just be paved in that location.
Okay, so as I was curious if we could get emergency vehicles in there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that it will be usable, and that'll be our second ingress egress for this neighborhood too, right?
Yes, exactly, yeah, yeah. And it'll be built to the standards for the heavy fire trucks, that sort of thing, yeah, but it will be 20 feet wide. I mentioned before, we have agreed also that we are going to make a donation to the Homes for Heroes of $35,000 as part of this development. And again, I went through that quickly. Are there any questions on that, on any of those conditions?
Yeah, I've got a few things to ask here. You haven't, when you talked about Universal Drive, according to the condition that was printed in our packet, all you're doing is putting asphalt on there. You're not doing any grading, you're not regrading it, you're not doing anything else. It says 20-foot asphalt on existing surface. So you're saying that's going to be sufficient for heavy equipment to access that area?
Yes.
There's not going to be, what about curbs and shoulders and that kind of stuff? I mean, if you're just throwing asphalt on top of the existing surface, I find it rather difficult to think that that's going to suffice for the kind of traffic that is expected to go on a 20-foot wide roadway.
Yeah.
And calling it calling it a second entry point to this community.
Right. And I think the wording of that, I mean, there will be grading done. It will be graded, leveled off, and there will be a sub-base put on before the asphalt goes down, that sort of thing. So it will be built to that standard.
And then why not to the town standard then?
For a city street,
Yes.
it's not in the city, for one thing. I
Correct.
think that's the main reason, right?
Sure. I think the number one thing is this is a voluntary action by the applicant. to do
Understood.
this. It is not a right-of-way. It is an access easement shared by a number of property owners.
Correct.
So if the impetus is to get this into a town street, there would need to be dedication of land, which would involve all those property owners. That's another exercise that the applicant would have to go through. Short of that, if it were built to full town standards, subgrade, base, stormwater drainage, utilities, well, there wouldn't be utilities because there is no water and sewer in this area for the properties that this serves, et cetera, then it would be a maintenance question about who would maintain that street in that regard.
Right.
So I don't know, the applicant's engineer might want to come up and speak a little bit more about how they intend to actually do this.
But they're doing it on Gideon though, right? Because Gideon's not in the town right now either.
Correct.
And Gideon right now is the same type of access road that Universal is.
There's one major difference. They own the land where Gideon is. It's
whole-
private property.
From Universal all the way down?
From the way that staff has analyzed the property lines, et cetera, and where they're showing that, again, this is not subdivision level detail, but when they get to that, that is one big difference. Gideon will be placed on what is now private property, turned into a public street dedicated to the town in this case. So that's different than where Universal is.
Right.
Goes across multiple properties. I think it slithers between property edges and so forth. It's not all on that church's property on the south side of it. So that's one big difference here between Gideon and Universal.
So then, was, for the developer then, was there any effort to have that level of conversation with those property owners to see if they would be, if they understood when you just came in there and said, hey, we're going to pave this for you, was there an understanding that you felt from the community that they understood that to be what you just described versus a town road with proper grading and sidewalks and all that? Or was it just, hey, we're going to pave this?
No, I think, I mean, there was a discussion about that. That question was asked by several people in terms of, is it going to be a city road or is it just going to be paved or whatever? And we were very, we were very straightforward that it's just going to be paved.
Okay.
Any other questions about the conditions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a clarification item. You've mentioned a couple of times using the COs as the standard for those construction deadlines.
Yeah, and I think I meant building permits.
Building permits. I know that is the preference of the town and the town staff.
Right.
The other piece is there was a request by a board member about our fire chief, who's the right one to ask on this question, with regard to that emergency access. The language that I have seen in the past is that it is designated as a private emergency access drive that is sometimes gated, sometimes not gated. Has there been a discussion about that? If it's gated, then it would be one where the fire department has access to open that gate in an emergency.
In this case, we haven't had that discussion. In this case, it was our understanding that it would remain open, that there would not be a gate on there, because it's been used for years as the access point.
Okay,
for the Gideon.
but it would remain it would remain a private street to be maintained by the HOA.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then cross access for the other owners. So
Yeah, nothing would change. The access that is right there legally right now remains the same.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
The only note I'll provide for the board's consideration is that there are instances of history where these sort of private emergency access drives, while a great boon to safety and connection, the average Joe doesn't know it's a private drive that they're not supposed to be using. And so it ends up becoming a drive.
Yep.
And so that is likely going to be something to consider in terms of how it functions, what its resiliency is, whether it becomes a burden upon the HOA, all those sort of things.
That's my point of bringing that up and asking about the difference between an access easement versus a public town road. And I'm pretty certain, that wasn't communicated well enough to have that kind of understanding, because that road, if it's going to be marketed and presented as a second access to that community, then that's what's going to happen. And I'm really concerned about that type of private access easement being used as a primary access to that area of the property, and the kinds of wear and tear on a 20-foot wide, not up to standard roadway, when one of our commissioner or one of our board members who's not here with us tonight last meeting was concerned about the 21-foot wide roadways throughout the community that you don't seem to have changed. So you still have that safety issue with the 20-foot wide road within the community that hasn't changed. Then you have a 20-foot wide road and more narrow road that's being labeled as a second access point to this community that, to the attorney's point, worries me that it's not going to hold up and there's going to be territorial issues in the long run between the HOA and the nearby residents, and that's a great concern of mine.
Would it be better to gate it?
There's certainly a business and policy decision to be made, but if it's being built as an emergency access for emergencies to be used by the fire department, it would be built to one standard. If it's actually going to be used as a convenient road for everyone, it would be built to a different standard,
Right.
if that makes any sense.
So what kind of direction should we, I mean, because should we look into gating it?
Well, it's the same direction I gave last time, with universal drive, and I think this is what the community is generally expecting, without having the full knowledge that your engineers have, is that road would be up to a town standard, that road would be what every other road in that community, in the community that you're developing, would look like. It would have sidewalks, it'd have curb, it would have gutter, it would be able to sustain the kind of traffic that's going to be coming through that area if it's going to be used as a access point to the development that you're building. And I think based on what you've described in your packet, it doesn't come close to that. And if it is being labeled as a emergency access, then to the attorney's point, it's not going to be used that way. And I think it's, either build it the way the rest of the community is being built, or you don't use it at all.
Okay.
I mean,
I guess I would have a question for staff, is can we put a road there?
Is the question, can where Universal Drive today shows up on a map be replaced by a public right-of-way? Is that the
Well,
question?
I would suspect that would be the requirement for what the attorney is guiding us on, understanding what is an issue that he has seen in his experiences. So I think the answer to your question is yes. Okay. And my understanding is yes, to the point that you said earlier about what additional steps the developer would have to go through in order to create a right-of-way rather than a private access easement. Yeah. And there's a big difference between what those two do. And yes, that would end up meaning that the town of Rolesville would likely take ownership of the maintenance of that roadway, just like it's going to take ownership and maintenance of the roadway within the community.
Right.
So another 500 feet of roadway, I can't imagine is going to break the bank, or however many, when we look at the town maintenance, when we look at how many feet of roadway are being put in this community, I can't see why that would be something that would be a huge deterrent for someone to walk away from.
Sure. So the applicant would have to
Of course.
attain right-of-way property from all of those property owners.
Correct.
Make that part of their package when they hit subdivision and dedicate that. But I think at the rezoning stage, showing that as a public right-of-way versus simply improving an existing access easement.
And frankly, that's what I was really hoping to see the developer do over the last couple months that they had to prepare for all this stuff. I mean, that's what the feedback we provided in the last meeting. And that's kind of what is a little bit, frankly, a little bit of a disappointment to see not have been done. And so, yes, that's what would be required, is to obtain a right-of-way and make it a town road, then I think that's, I get what you're already doing as a bonus. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take that away from you, and you're doing something above what's minimally required. But given the situation overall and understanding the community surrounding the development that you're building, that's a huge step and a much greater step, and I understand that. But I also feel that that's what makes the north side access to your community that much more valuable, and that much more valuable to the community around you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we have, I mean, as long as the town is fine with it and we can do it, right?
The applicant would have to attain the property, make that part of their annexation also, which just came to mind. That land would have to be annexed into the town, and then part of their rezoning plan, and then ultimately part of their subdivision plan to dedicate that as right-of-way.
Correct.
Then they would build it to full town, construction standards, and at which point that would be determined whether it has to be a 50-foot right-of-way or a 60-foot right-of-way, based on the traffic load.
Right.
So more analysis for that to be
Correct.
an actual full access drive into this subdivision, and the properties off of it would serve, which are those county properties.
Right, and that planning and that foresight would have been something that would have been able to be presented to the communities over the course of the last 2 months, which they had additional meetings for. They could have taken that plan, that idea to those owners and said, this is how much of your land we would have to take in order to put in this type of a roadway, which is what would be required for the primary access point of this development. That's what I was kind of hoping to see happen, and it hadn't. But that's what would need to happen to make sure everybody's clear on what would it take.
So for clarity here, only because the lawyer's going to limit his comments to the law, whether it's public or private in terms of its status is not so much the issue I was addressing as the engineering question and the use question.
Right.
So you can have a private street, we have many of them, that are used by the public, but they're not publicly maintained. So you have private and public maintenance, and you sort of have private and public access. And those are choices that can be made, particularly out in the county. My comment was more to let's line up or consider lining up the function with the status. But it is likely that some additional conversation needs to be had regarding whether it is publicly dedicated or not.
Right.
And then how it is constructed, as I believe the engineer is likely walking up here to comment on with regard to those items. But at the end of the day, something that would be built as a private emergency access for fire trucks would not function well long-term if it were in practice a public right-of-way. That was the extent of what you should have taken for what I was saying.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wouldn't it all be all conditional on the property owners agreeing to that?
What's that?
The property owners who currently own that land would have to agree, because
Correct.
right now the easement is not there, so they don't want to agree to have that land turned into a public street. You lose that access completely.
Correct. And that's the conversation I think the community needs to have with the developer to fully understand the differences between that type of commitment versus paving 20 feet and calling it quits. Right. Yeah, and putting up a gate, right. Because then that would mean that all the Gideon Drive property owners that aren't part of this project would now not be able to use that if it's gated. They would have to come through the entrance to this community, even though they're not a part of it, which is part of the reason why that whole idea of having 2 access points, which is what we talked about in the last meeting, was shared across the board.
I don't see the road as being that big of an issue. Most of the county roads that DOT accepts are 20-foot wide asphalt with shoulders and ditch sections. And I think if it were constructed to that, it would probably be a slight improvement on what's there now and would provide probably adequate access. And, I mean, it's not going to be a primary for the subdivision, so a majority of the cars are going to come in through the main entrance, and you would have some of the Gideon residents and probably a few people that come in the back way. But I think it could be constructed, to a DOT standard that would hold up. Most roads in the county's jurisdiction are constructed to those standards and haven't been a problem.
Okay?
I believe you
my
said
opinion.
this is going to be maintained by the HOA. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
So that's the long term, this HOA would maintain this road for all the residents that are currently there.
Yes.
If paving issues in the future or something like that, correct? Yes.
And just listening to this, and again, we're all for this. We want to do whatever is best for the community. You just mentioned something. What if we built the 20-foot road to NCDOT standards and left it as a 20-foot asphalt road?
I would be satisfied.
Would that make sense?
I guess I'm sure your TIA probably impacted, or this road, Universal Drive, has made an impact on the analysis you've done for this neighborhood, correct? So having this road is definitely part of the second ingress egress that we've been talking about for the last few meetings, but, so.
I think, yes. The TIA shows the vast majority of traffic coming out the main entrance.
Right.
Yes,
What is rough numbers of this road usage? I'm just throwing a rough guess.
yeah. Unless you have that. While we're looking that up, let's go back. Would that, because I'm just thinking of the best way to do this, and I'm thinking And actually, we will sit down with the residents, we'll sort of see what they think about that. But I think everybody's probably going to settle on, they don't want this big wide roadway out there, okay, which is probably going to attract more traffic if it's done that way. But do it the way that it is now. They've been using this road for years, okay, dirt road, and just, make it to the standards though, so there's not a problem. And I get that, so there's not a maintenance problem or there's not something like that. But do it that way and leave it in the same location.
I think if it were built to DOT standards personally, as long as you adhere to the, your subgrade and your stone and your asphalt compaction and thickness, it should hold up as well as any other DOT street in residential neighborhoods. If they have an HOA to collect dues, they'll have some money there if it does need to be repaved in 20 years or something.
Yeah, I think that's, again, I'm just suggesting that might work. I mean, that might make a lot of sense for everybody, So we'll look into that. And we would agree to definitely do that, for sure, so. Okay. I wanted to get back to something. I wanted to talk and just go down. The last time we were here, there were a number of concerns. I've touched on some of them before already, but I want to make sure I hit everything, okay? The connectivity we've talked about already. Access to the greenway, where we've moved the location already. I've talked about that. We did have another neighborhood meeting. We expanded the radius of that meeting out. Had very good discussion, had about 12, I think, neighbors there. And again, I've touched on some of the issues that came up at that meeting and some of the things we've put in place because of that. The streets. There was an issue last time where there was, one of the members mentioned would like to have wider streets, mentioned 30 feet or whatever. We have not put that on our plan, and I think I would turn to the town to answer why that's not on our plan. If the planners would like to address that.
I would ask the board, is that topic still a request of the board or a question of the board about the actual cross-sections of the functionality of the street?
I personally feel like if they are adhering to the town's standards and specifications, it should be sufficient. To ask to go beyond what's published is a little bit overstepping.
Right. The standard cross-section will be dictated by the type of uses on there, single-family homes, et cetera, and then the traffic flow on them. The hierarchy of streets is based on traffic volumes. Lowest is a 50-foot right-of-way, 2-lane, I think it's 22 feet, asphalt back-to-back, et cetera, up to, 4-lane median divided freeway based on traffic volumes. So this subdivision would, at the subdivision stage, would show those things and in the appropriate cross-sections. I would expect most every street to be a 50-foot right-of-way, which is the minimal smallest size street, with probably the main entrance from Jonesville being a 60-foot wide right-of-way collector. And that's where you get up that pavement to about 30 foot of asphalt. So that would be my expectation just off the cuff. But again, those are details that the engineer comes up with when they submit for the subdivision plan.
And personally, I'm, as long as it meets the town's requirements, I think that that should be sufficient. That's what just about every subdivision in the past is, or that's all subdivisions in the past have been held to.
Absolutely. They are held to the LDO standards at the appropriate time, which would be the next step for this preliminary subdivision. Yeah. It would show all those right-of-way widths.
So in pulling up the Ramey Kemp TIA that they did for the town on behalf of the town, it would be approximately maximum 10 additional trips in the morning peak hour condition on Universal Drive.
Does neighborhood would create 10 additional trips is all?
Correct.
Okay.
In the morning peak hour, because 75% of the traffic's going out the main entrance according to their TIA.
Okay. Okay.
Does that answer your question? Does that make
Sure,
sense?
yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about the streets, the affordable housing, I mentioned the donation, no vinyl siding. The park we talked about. One other issue that came up, I think at the meeting and also in the neighbors' meeting, was some of the neighbors asked about tying into our water and sewer, the infrastructure that we put in. We're fine with that, but my understanding is they would have to annex into the town to be able to do that. And I've explained that to some of the residents, and I think they still might be interested. And I think it would be something that I'll talk more with planning about, but if certain residents want to annex in, I don't think the town would have any problem with that. I don't think. And we would help those residents, yeah, and then we could tie them in, that sort of thing like that. Okay. I think those were all the major issues from the last meeting. And so again, we've tried to address them all. I think we've addressed all of them to the best we could. The access to the Greenway location, I know isn't exactly where some people wanted it, right up on there, but I think it's very, very close now to Jonesville Road and accomplishes what we wanted to set out to do.
Can I go ahead and address that point, though?
Sure, yeah.
So the project requirement is 183 spaces, parking spaces for the townhomes. And you have, it's stated that you've got 197 on your plan, and I know that number will change or fluctuate or what have you.
Yeah.
How are those 14 extra required, how are the 14 extra spaces that you have, how are they dispersed amongst the 4 parking lots that you've created? Are they evenly, are they more biased to one particular lot in particular, or what?
I will put Jeremy on the spot here because he comes up with those calculations.
And I'm not sure I have the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't think we've exactly analyzed which area would need how many spots to the extent to say the extras are in this spot.
Okay. And I know you might have a little trouble, or if you can pull up the map on where these lots are, because one of my biggest concerns with the modification, and even the way it was before, is the location of this parking lot that you're allocating for public use. Is that public use parking lot part of your calculation for your required spaces? Because if it is, then those public spaces, or the spaces that you're saying people can access and use in order to access the greenway, would be private property. So in that respect, technically, they would be trespassing by parking on a private parking space to access a public greenway if the spaces that are in your parking lot are the ones allocated and required for the townhome development.
So currently, yes, they are included in the total count.
Okay.
There are 14 spaces in that spot, in that parking area, which is approximately what we're over.
Okay.
Parked, so there is some potential for saying we can remove those from the required parking calculations and have them as additionals. The other thing I would add to that is that, like the private greenway trails, they're going to be private greenways to be maintained by the HOA,
Right.
but for public access. This parking area will be considered similarly, that it's private parking for the benefit of the public to be maintained by the HOA. It's not intended to be something that the town is going to be maintaining as part of their greenway system.
Now, I don't know what experiences any of you guys have with townhome communities. I grew up in one, and I'm very familiar with the ones in our community right now. And the biggest problem we have is parking, okay? And what I worry about is you're allocating these spaces for public use, but then there's no way to guarantee that a public person has access to a space, because a person who lives there could easily be using those spaces, particularly with where they are located. Which is why my suggestion was to have that parking lot out on the corner somewhere, so that it is very clearly not part of the community, but when you're nestled in the community, those 14 spaces are going to be used by the residents of those townhomes right there. I don't care what sign you put up and what you do, they're going to be used. And then where is anyone who's interested in coming to that greenway? How are they going to get there, and where are they going to park when those spaces are going to be used by residents completely? There's no dedicated space for public parking is what the short of it is.
I mean, yeah, there could definitely be signage up there that for Greenway Trail access only, and towing to be enforced or something like that. I don't know many other ways to police that situation regardless of where the parking space is.
Well, it's by design. I mean, for instance, the next project that's up here tonight has done exactly that. And that was the feedback, that very same feedback I gave you guys, I gave them on that project, and they're doing exactly that. They have a parking space, a parking lot that's not attached to that development, that is at the trailhead of the Greenway, so that there is no confusion about what that parking lot is intended for. So it's possible by design, but not in this design. So it's possible, and you wouldn't have to police it, because by nature you'd have to walk through a swamp, for example, to get to the townhome if you decide to park in a public parking lot. And then you won't have the worry about public people coming into a private community and all the noise and commotion that comes on with that, because then there's a big discussion about, when can you be there, when you can't be there. Park closes at dawn and all that kind of stuff. So I just worry about having the public mingling into a private community is not a good idea. It's one of the reasons why the Parks and Recreation Department has their kind of approach to what they do with trailheads and what they do with public parking within communities or on the outside perimeters of them. That's why I gave you that feedback at the last meeting, and this unfortunately doesn't seem to address that, especially if all those spaces are part of your requirement. Then they are private spaces. So it would be interesting to see how you can, address that concern.
Well, I think we answered, they probably are not required, right?
I would have to double check, but I believe they would not be required.
So we can handle that. And we look very hard at moving it right up to Jonesville Road. The problem is we can't get to it without losing buildings all the way down the street.
Right.
It's just, we can't sneak by. We try to sneak by, but we can't sneak by the wetlands with the access point.
Okay. Just a clarification on Gideon Drive. It's a quarter-mile road, and based on what I heard earlier, that's going to take the full treatment from Universal all the way down to where it ends. So that's going to get the full standard of sidewalks on both sides all the way up, because your drawing in the packet that we got wasn't quite like this, and the section that you've got trees and all here wasn't like that in the packet. So I just wanted to make sure that the treatment on Gideon is going to be consistent the whole length of that road.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, and that's what I thought you said earlier, but it wasn't in our packet presented this way, so that's what I wanted to clarify on that. Street C, dead ends right here, stubs out to the church. Technically stubs out. Is there any way to put a T there, or is the little bubble right there intended to be your turnaround?
The bubble's intended to be the turnaround.
Okay.
It extends less than 150 feet past that bubble, so it would not be long enough to warrant a more permanent turnaround at the end as well as the
Right.
bubble.
Okay. So, but that's what the bubble was intended for, is to act as an alternate turnaround instead of having a hammerhead T at the end of that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I don't have any.
Any more questions for you?
No, I don't have any more questions.
All right. Don't hear any more questions right now. I see we have a number of residents in the audience.
Actually,
Yep, you have one more?
yeah, if we could, real quick, if I can get this going right here. Some of you asked last time in terms of just product, okay? And we do have the builder here, Ryan Holmes, who will be our builder partner, okay? And we've just included some of these in the pack, so I just wanted to run through them quickly and see if you guys had any questions on any of these. But this just gives an example of some of this will be the single-family product. And these are the townhomes, a typical example of their townhomes. And that would be a street scene on there. And again, that shows that's a 22-foot wide street, just like ours, with the park, how the cars park in the driveways, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to throw some of those out there just to, I know there was a question about that last time. So, okay. Any questions on that, or would you like to hear from Ryan Holmes at all?
So just for clarification on that, while that may be useful for illustrative purposes in matching up to the conditions, certainly those are not binding upon this development. The developer could end up with a different builder, or this builder could end up going with a different palette or a different design. Not really part of your zoning consideration.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to state, last time when I was here, we talked about, we really feel that this is an ideal plan for this piece of property. This piece of property is a little unusual because of all the wetlands, and it's a little oddly shaped and that sort of thing, so there's some special considerations. But it does fit right in with Hopper Communities in terms of what they're building, and it'll tie in with all the greenways, all the connectivity. The TIA improvements on Mitchell Mill and Jonesville will help the community in general. These homes will be customers for that commercial piece on Hopper Communities also. I mean, the whole thing ties very, very well together, and as pointed out by the staff, that this really does meet the intent of your long-term plan. And actually isn't as dense as your long-term plan. And I think there's a lot of very, very positive things about this entire plan. So I appreciate your time. And any more questions for me?
I'll just make one more comment as a reminder of one of the things that you'll have to face on the town board, right? And this is what I brought up last time, and this is, I don't mean to be a stickler on it. I know it makes it sound like I'm a townhome hater. I'm not. Like I said, I grew up in them. But the board has been very, very consistent with townhomes being within a walkable space of downtown Rolesville for the near future. And as I said in the last meeting very clearly, I'm all for development. But for me, this high density of townhomes in this area is not appropriate. Now, I know when you do the math, and you showed your math, and I get what you come up with your numbers, and I understand how you come up with making it look like it's lower than what our residential medium would be. And I understand that, because you can easily just make an argument that if all the single-family homes that you have in this design was in the swamp, then you could put apartment buildings in where you have the townhomes, and you could still come up with that 2.1 dwelling units per acre. So there's a lot of different ways to do the math to still end up in a result that makes it look favorable. But we still have a situation where the town board will be looking at the walkability, and this is well beyond the walkable space to downtown Rolesville, even if all of the infrastructure is put in place. So it's one of the reasons why I've not been in favor of this, because of that, and I know that's what they're expecting. And like I said, I grew up in a townhome community, and I know what it feels like to be in the middle of nowhere and nowhere to play and nowhere to do things. And that's what my concern is with this type of plan, when you have this kind of density in there, and which is why, again, last meeting, I had requested the consideration of making it all single-family detached units. And again, it would have been nice to at least have seen you go through the effort of plotting it out and then making a case for, okay, look how many more units we lose, and then look how much we're spending on the land, and making a case for why this is better. Because as you might recall in our last meeting, you and I went back and forth a little bit about what's best for Rolesville. And I said at that point, what is best is opinion. It's a subjective idea. So I needed to hear more from you as to why it's best for Rolesville. And I understand and I appreciate the work you've put in between these two meetings. It just still falls a little bit short for me, especially knowing what you're going to be facing at the town board. And that's all I really want to communicate to for whatever benefit that is for you.
No, and I appreciate that. I really do, and I appreciate your opinion for sure. And again, I will state again that even, forget about how acres, even if you cut this down and whatever, this is not a dense project.
I get that. Mathematically, it's not. But if you live on Jonesville Road and you understand the kind of traffic that drives through there, and you understand what the project to the south and this one will bring, it will bring a lot more traffic proportionately. It may not seem like that on a traffic study, but when you have a narrow two-lane road with no sidewalks, with no shoulder, and you can't walk down that road. And so it's a very unsafe road right now. And I know that as a development, it's not your problem because it's not your area and it's not your purview to be worried about what's north of you. And I understand you're making road improvements along your section of the road, but it is still part of the overall factor as to what you're bringing to the area with, you know, twice as many townhomes that they would otherwise be if they were single-family homes. So I get that, and I 100% understand that, but at the same token, you're bringing more people into an area that is already having an issue with safety and roads that nobody's doing anything about. And that's why that higher density, even though I know it's low by math, is still a concern of mine.
Well, I get that, yeah. And I just wanted to point out that we actually did the layout with all single-family homes, okay? We did do that, and it's a struggle with everything we've got going. You know, we talk about very easily about, you know, we're going to put this sidewalk in, we're going to pave this, we're going to put a mile of greenway in. It does add up, and it
Right.
really does. So there is that. However, more importantly, and again, that's what either Ryan Holmes could address this too, is that it's better, most planners will tell you, it's better to have diversity. You want to have diversity of product.
Of course.
The townhomes work as a first-time buyer, as a working class type home type thing, and then you have the single family as the next move up type. That's how it works, and that's how, again, a lot of good planners will tell you that's what you want. You want to have that diversity of product in there for that diverse buyer.
I understand that, and I also understand there's two ways of looking at things, and we can debate all night long about what that is, you know, because the diversity also means that you have more rooftops, which means you make more money, but you can also make duplexes and put duplexes on there because they won't cost $350,000 like a townhome does now. So when we talk about affordability, that's all proportionate towards somebody's income, and that's a whole nother question that the town is starting to work on anyway. But I hear you 100%, I really do. And all I'm really trying to do is help you understand what you're going to have to deal with when you get to the town board. And if you did do a plot that's all single family and you did do some of that math and you did do some of that work, then you need to bring it. You need to bring it.
No, I understand. I guess I wanted to bring that up because I just wanted to, a lot of thought does go into this. It isn't
Of
something we
course,
just slapped
yeah.
down there. And the very first plan we did over a year ago, you know, has been massaged and moved, because, you know, the staff has made suggestions, we've made changes, and we've made upgrades and, you know, and different things like that to get it better all the way along. So it's not just something thrown on a board. There's a reason for it.
Totally understand that.
Okay, appreciate that.
All right. Thank
Any other questions?
I have none.
All right.
Audience?
I don't have any. Okay.
Did we have a-
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I see there's a number of residents here. I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak in favor or against the subdivision, if you would. If you would, keep it brief and step to the microphone, state your name for the record, please. If there's anyone that would like to speak.
Please.
Yep.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marie Jarvis, and my husband Myron is sitting back there with me, and we live at 3704 Gideon Drive. Excuse me. We thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. We stand before you not only as a concerned resident, but as a custodian of the values and character that make our community a unique and cherished place to call home. Tonight, we would like to express our deepest concern as a homeowner that will be directly impacted by the proposed development that looms over our community. Our community, with its quaint charm and close-knit community, is more than just a collection of buildings and streets. It is a living testament to the spirit of our shared history and the values that bind us together. As we contemplate the prospect of this development, we must consider not only the immediate economic gains, but also the long-term impact on the soul of our community. Our intention is not to oppose progress or development, but rather to oppose the rezoning of the land to a high-density designation and express our genuine concerns about the potential impact this development may have on our community, safety, and overall well-being. Firstly, let us address the issue of congestion and traffic. The already approved Mitchell Mill project and the proposed Harris Creek development, with its increased population and commercial activity, threatens to turn our quiet street into a bustling thoroughfare. This not only poses a risk to the safety of our children, but also undermines the very essence of why we chose to live here, the peace and serenity that comes with a smaller, more intimate community. The Jonesville community, we ask if we can get the speed limit reduced to 25 miles per hour. Also, sidewalks along Jonesville Road throughout the community, not just on the end where the development is going. You know, I mean, it's already, you know, high traffic comes through. I mean, people don't honor the speed limit, so hey, I witnessed this sitting at the end of the road with my sons getting on the school bus. However, secondly, moreover, we are deeply concerned about the potential health implications of this development. As a homeowner of a private well, with all the development that is taking place around our community, rock blasting, potential water contamination from runoff are all issues that could adversely affect our wells and the well-being of our community. As we know, contaminated water leads to long-term health problems, which we should not take lightly. Our community's health should always be top priority when considering any development project. We also ask the question, will well water testing be done before and after construction? What assurance does the developer provide to make sure that our water supply is not worsening? We also ask, given how close our property is to this project, how can we connect to the town water without being annexed? Also, will our house be inspected by the developer before and after development to ensure that any blasting that is required has not damaged our home? In conclusion, I urge the board and the developers to consider the concerns of the residents who cherish our community and the character of our community, built over generations. This is a legacy that we hold in trust for future generations. Let us all work together and explore alternative solutions that prioritize sustainable development, preserving our unique character and maintaining the quality of life for all residents there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, Attorney. To answer, or I address, I think, one of the questions around the annexation, that's a state level thing, is not?
No, annexation is a local determination that would be made in,
Okay.
and this case is accompanied by an annexation case as well. The practical reality of that is we could formalize it and have two cases on the agenda, and then we discuss the annexation, and then we would discuss the zoning.
I thought it was
and
county or state.
no one would want to participate in it.
County or state something, not a,
There are all sorts of state limitations on it, but it is a local decision that will be made together with this case as it goes. Yep.
I guess they cannot connect to city water and sewer without the annexation, without being annexed, right? Is that-
Correct.
is that-
That is a provision of the merger agreement between the town of Rolesville and the city of Raleigh. So Raleigh serves only those who are citizens of Rolesville. And we have done that. In fact, at the last meeting, there was an emergency instance of an annexation for a gentleman who had a failing well.
Right.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak from the public? Thank you. If you would, please state your name and address.
Darlene Jones, 3816 Jonesville Road. I concur with everything that was said tonight that the young lady just brought up. I've been in Jonesville area for probably 51 years, my husband and I. But I did have some concerns with the HOA. My concerns was that HOAs can change their rulings from year to year whenever they want to change it. And my concern is if the HOA come in and they have that and they vote that we don't want any of anybody to come in and use the greenway except them, they can do it. Now, unless it's in writing from the attorney point of view, that it is open to the community. Is that right, community? So that's my concerns, to make sure that if it is an HOA, that they occur to all that has approved, if it is approved. But I would prefer not to see that many houses come into a location with townhomes and all of that, because it's a lot, and it's a lot of traffic going back and forth all the time. Now, another thing, will they have a security guard in that area with the HOA? Okay? And I thought I heard someone say, I thought it was the young man before, said something about a 3-lane improvement. Is that correct? Did I hear something about a 3-lane? 3-lane?
Yeah, I think it's a regular 2-lane with a turning lane in the middle.
Okay.
Jonesville Road's ultimate cross-section is a 2-lane road with a middle left turn lane
Okay.
the whole way.
Okay.
And there would be an egress into the neighborhood at the community's entrance also, correct? If I remember the study correctly.
Right. At the time of development, if this were to be approved at that main intersection, a dedicated left turn lane with a storage of X to be, or it might have been laid out in the TIA, would be built. But throughout the rest of it, it would be a middle left turn lane. Of course, it would serve where there are driveways. So you have that striped area for a good stretch before the next driveway, and then it could be formalized into a left turn lane without the striping.
Okay. And I just ask you guys to look at preserving as we build in Jonesville, building our generation, because we're looking to build for life. Not only this generation, but more generations. We just don't want to be bound in a location that it brings restrictions on us and our children and our grandkids. So it's very important that not only are we looking at the now, but we're also looking at the future. And thank you.
Thank you. And to address one of your concerns, Ms. Jones, I believe town may correct me if I'm wrong, but once this is annexed, it will be police protection will be provided for the neighborhood. So I don't think there will be any, private security guards.
One part is Wake County, and at the end is going to be Rolesville. So
This new neighborhood will be in the town's jurisdiction, so the police will be patrolling that neighborhood.
we'll be patrolling that neighborhood, but that's Rolesville.
Yes.
Right where I am, 3816 Jonesville Road, we're Wake County. We can't call Rolesville. We have to call Wake County Sheriff. That's right. So we'll sandwich in between, and there's 2 jurisdictions we're bringing together.
My name is Donald Hartsfield. I agree with my aunt and the lady that made that statement. I've been in that community, well, I'm 76 years old. So I've been there just about all my life, off and on. There is a great hazard putting a subdivision on one end and a subdivision on the other end. Plus, you split the Jonesville Road. And as they were saying, dynamite, now my house shook when they were blasting down there. But my concern now is the speed. When you're gonna close us in with speed on both sides, the people that use the bypass that didn't have it before, we have more traffic coming through. And as kids, I got one great-grandchild, and I would hate very much for my great-grandchild to be walking to one of her cousin's houses, which she has a lot, and a truck hit her. The dump trucks come through there, and they running 60 miles an hour. We got more curves. We're in the middle. The curves are on the end, both ends, the high hill you guys are building on. They don't even stay on their side of the road. We have not local vehicles, but people that come through, they're in the middle of the road. They don't, you're adding more cars and people to use those exits. So like it's been said, the road needs to be widened. Something needs to be done. We do need sidewalks because we've been there forever. So we don't want we don't mind progress, but we want it to be fair. That's my statement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would you please
Oh, very much so. 42, I'm sorry, 4712 Cousin Lane.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak from the public at this time? Please state your name and address also.
My name's will sound real familiar to you, okay? My name is Donald Moss, M-O-S-S. 5005 C and L Avenue. Okay. My concern is dealing with what's already been said, but it's something I've really been thinking about since I got familiar with it. And that is the blasting. You know, I was doing some reading, and in those reports it says that if you can feel the blasting, then it's subject to affect your dwelling. And like Donald was saying that he felt the blasting when they was blasting, and I did too. And so, we thinking about, you know, it could do damage to our wells, right? So if the majority of the wells are being damaged or could be damaged by the blasting, then it seems like we won't have no other choice but to get city water annexed, right? It's kind of like forcing us into getting city water. Then you're gonna have to pay city taxes and those kinds of things. So, and I know that it was, I don't know if it was in the report about, or in some of the questions about having your property examined before and after blasting, so you can determine. And I know that it's some firms, law firms, that will come out and do that, but the law firms ain't doing the blasting, you know. So I'm thinking that that'll be a good idea to have the developers to take on that responsibility, because it could do a lot of damage to our wells and stuff. So thank you.
So question for the engineer and the builder. Are you going to be doing blasting in the area? And if you are going to be doing blasting, do you agree with what they just asked? So, like, I live in an area, they're blasting right nearby. The cats even wake up because it's that loud. They actually heard it on a conference call once it was that close. They did an inspection of the well, they did an inspection of the house, and I mean, they thoroughly examined all the house. Would you be agreeable to that as well as part
Oh,
of
yes.
this?
No, we don't even have to go. We do that everywhere.
Put it
Yeah,
on the condition.
we're,
As my lawyer says, put it in black and white.
yes, absolutely. No, that we will definitely do that. We're required to do that anyway. Yeah, we definitely do that. And there's a pre-survey and a post-survey on everything, on wells, septic, foundations, china inside the house, that sort of thing like that, everything. So yeah, that'll be done, yeah. And there will be some blasting. We haven't confirmed that yet, but Rolesville has pretty much rock everywhere, and there'll be some blasting. I don't know how much, yeah, so. But definitely we'll go through all the procedures and that we're supposed to.
So will that cover well water and foundation, building foundations as well?
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
And then what's the radius from the most northern part of your property that you would be willing to do this, or that the law requires? Because go ahead, I'll
Well,
follow
The
up.
law requires, do you know the distance? I do not. Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know. There is,
There's usually a perimeter.
Right.
So the reason why I asked that is because this community's been around since the early 1800s, okay, if not before. And I would almost be certain that almost all those wells are sharing the same underground water source. So I would be concerned that this radius, that the legal requirement would not cover the entire community. So I would really request you to consider making sure the entire community is covered. That's a very generous, and I understand it's a big ask, but given everything else that's going on, I think that's the least that would be, acceptable, is to include the entire, I think it's 147 properties. I don't know how many wells there are, but, I'm just asking to consider it. I'm not putting you on the spot right now, but that's one of the things that is the biggest concern, is that if you mess up one well inadvertently through blasting, that creates a situation where everybody in that community can be easily affected by that.
Yeah. No, we definitely will look into that. I
Okay.
don't know this, I'll look into the distance you're talking
Understood.
about in terms of where that is.
Understood.
Absolutely, yeah. And we want that to happen too. I mean, it's better for us to have that pre-survey and do it the right way anyway, so. yeah,
Right.
Definitely will look into that.
Thank you.
And they're very thorough when they do the survey of the house. Like, my wife had to go
they-
clean before
yeah,
it
I've
came
gone
in.
through it too. They very do, yeah. That's why I mentioned the China thing that they did in our house. Can I address some of the other ones that they have been
Absolutely.
brought up so far?
Yeah.
Okay. The security guard you took care of. The HOA, in terms of changing the rules, and I will check on this, but I think we can codify and put in our plat, when we plat the property, that we can codify that cannot change in terms of that parking lot. I think that's possible. I'm sort of looking at you, but I think that's possible to do it that way, and we commit that we will do that, so that it cannot be changed. Okay? The blasting we just talked about, I was going to talk about that, but we just talked about that. There was a mention of 25 miles per hour, and I didn't catch whether they were talking about Jonesville Road or internal to the site.
She said,
Jonesville?
Jonesville Road.
Oh, okay, that's out of our,
It's a DOT thing.
we can't do anything about that, it's a town, yeah, so,
That's DOT.
yeah, that's a DOT thing, so, okay. I think that was everything.
All right, thank you. Was there anyone else from the public?
My name is Alicia Ruiz, and my address is 3857 Jonesville Road. Well, I'm new in that community in Jonesville Road, of course. I've been there since 2016, and all this community has been welcoming me to with open heart, really. Some of my neighbors, they have actually even come to help me when I need, because I'm a single mother. And I really feel sorry for this community to be transformed, but the progress will come. I live also in a townhome, and it's no fun. It's a lot of things going on when you bring more people, and there is never enough parking spaces, and thinking that everybody's gonna just leave and come through Jonesville Road to that entrance is very much like a dream. I mean, people in the morning will try to exit from anywhere. So I would like to see Universal as the best road possible to be able to transit through it, and also if a service, an emergency service is needed, to be able to go in and out, right? And according with the laws, whatever laws they may apply to whoever is gonna maintain that road, to be sure that is very well described. I would like also to see, like, I guess Derek mentioned about the parking space, more isolated from the houses than people who wants to use the community areas. We can use it without an issue, because I mean, I don't want to say this, but it will be also racial situation if we get into that community and people start notice that we are using some spaces that maybe not okay for them to us to use it. So I would like to see like a special parking lot for these areas, because I would like for my daughter to be able to walk around, use her bike, and as the same as other children around. I think this community has been there for so many years, and somehow it has been missed, either for the county, for the city, or maybe we didn't really have the opportunity before to speak out and say that we are here and we care about each other, and we want to have the same kind of picture. I mean, I guess we don't really like the idea to have townhomes around, if that would be possible. It's something that maybe progress can consider on, that will be very nice for us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Oh, one more.
My name is Irvin Rogers, and I stay at 5012 Mistletoe Drive. I just want to make sure, you know, I want to put my name in the hat. You know, I've been in Jonesville for about 40-some years, and all the things that everybody have said so far, you know, I don't want to see it change, like especially during the blasting, we ain't got no water. You know, I've been there 45 years. And another thing is about the traffic. Right now, like several of them had said, how people come through Jonesville, and they might be running 60, you know, and it's a lot of children in Jonesville. So I just want to put my name in the hat that I'm for what they said. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have one more rebuttal.
If I could just address that, we did sort of the calculations on the parking too, and we can dedicate those 14 those spots to just greenway parking only. As you mentioned, you know, somebody might go in there, but we'll put signs up, you know, tow, that sort of thing like that, but we will dedicate it for that and make it permanent.
All right.
One quick question, I guess, Mr. George. So the, as they're referring to the universal drive maintenance, and I think that's something you said you have or are willing to put in, that will be definitely taken care of through the HOA for
Yes,
years down the road.
that's the plan,
so.
that will be part of the common area maintenance that the HOA will take care of forever, yeah.
Okay. And then one gentleman, I know several are asking about the blasting, so say if there is a well issue, what is your, say if they have a water issue, no water, what is your, how long would you take to resolve?
As soon as possible. I mean, when we've done this with the crews we use, everything like that, and we'll have crews on site when this was going on. So it's should be done within hours of when we get notification, yeah. Now, you can't guarantee that, but that's, yeah, it should be right there, yeah,
No,
because
I
we have
think
the crews
that's
there.
fair. Right. I agree. Thank you.
Yes, please step back up.
Concern, Universal, he's talking about, he's saying it's gonna be 20 feet. Are they gonna have drainage? What kind of drainage would they have for ditches?
DOT standard.
Because you said, you guys are saying no flooding
DOT standard, right?
property. Water goes, now, it's a creek behind my house where we used to farm the land, so I know it's a creek there. And when I built my house, it was a battlefield. So I had my granddaddy to run me ditches across my land on both sides. So when the water goes, it wouldn't go directly to my yard, but go to our ditch. Because our road is a private road, but it's water, it's state, how can I say it? If they was annexed, they would already had the property. All we would do is sign the property off for Cousins Lane because it's wide enough for ditches and a regular road. So coming down that hill, I remember when the road stopped right there at the bridge. Remember when the road was just a dirt road? And there's a lot of rocks in that road. A lot of rocks in Jonesville, period. Most of the wells are down in the rocks. So I'm asking, you saying 20 feet, which my road right now probably maybe 20 feet, a little bit wider than 20 feet, our road, because of lane. What kind of drainage are you putting in for that road?
Well, and again, this is a little different than normal because.
No, not for drainage.
No, hang on,
Okay.
let me finish. What I'm saying is, right now, it's draining in some fashion, okay? And that's what, when the question was asked, what we're doing on the road, we are not changing the grade out there to a great extent. Now, having said that, I would think that we will take a look in terms of if we're damming something up from north to south, because that's where, as it's running across there, that would be the only concern. If somehow we've brought it up so high that we're damming something up, in that case, we would put in some sort of culverts or something like that that would drain, make sure it drains the way that it drains now.
Now, most developers, once you build something, drainage is gonna change. If you don't do it
If it's a
completely, if you don't do it completely, it's exactly right. If you're gonna just do it a little bit, I don't think they have water coming down, going down, start toward Mr. Austin's house from the fields, even from Universal Road. They don't have water, because everything is going down here that way.
It goes toward Alston's.
Right.
Yes.
So he don't have water. The water right now, it comes out the ditch, comes from their ditches, which is good, and goes down the road. Now, water do cross where Universal is into the road and goes
Right.
the ditch, it hits the highway. That's what I'm questioning you
Oh,
about.
down near the road, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, those ditches aren't gonna change, I mean, the
No, I'm
ditch.
talking about
Yeah,
from Universal.
Right.
In front of the church and the side of the
right.
houses.
Right now, there's no ditches really on Universal Drive, right now,
Well,
okay?
what are you
And-
gonna do to
and-
make that-
And it drains naturally toward the Alston's to the south, and on the other side, I'm assuming it drains naturally to the north, okay?
No, it
So-
goes south.
Well, okay, but we're not gonna be changing, again,
But I'm
we're
not
not
saying,
changing it.
no, I'm
yeah.
not talking about that change, I'm talking about Universal itself.
Yeah.
If you gonna pave something, you got to do something for that water.
What is this?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I believe most of these issues would be addressed at their construction plan stage, and that would be a better time once they have profiles and grades. But I feel like we can ask the town that it would be a requirement to not,
They're
What's that?
required for the runoff anyways, by law.
Yeah.
It would be the DOT.
Okay, no, that's
Yeah.
what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
so it'll be assured that a governmental agency will approve those plans and ensure that they don't back up any
When
water.
he said the road, he just said 20 feet of road with asphalt on it, with traffic going on it.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the DOT standards, so we'll have some types of standards that this road will be constructed to that's acceptable by a governmental agency.
I want to be sure that everything is taken care of.
Mhm.
From Jonesville Road from one end to the other end, even the end you're already doing.
So,
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard Dowdy, and I've been in Jonesville 35 years at 4627 Running Deer Drive. Also, I'm a deacon at our church at 3921 Jonesville Road. We also have a parsonage at 4613 Mailer Drive. So I'm here representing 3 different properties within the Jonesville community. And while we're not exactly close to Universal and all that area, the thing I'd like to address concern with, and this is just for the planning board going forward. Jonesville has been a single unit, what do you call it, single house per acre or whatever for a long time. Now I know it's at 2. But when you look at these developments, if they're not high, they're medium density. And we are now being inundated with possible 1, if not up to 3 different communities that are either medium or high density. And that changes what Jonesville looks like. So we have a concern, and as the other community owners, we have a concern about the integrity of our community. What is it going to look like when these developments are approved and implemented? It'll look totally different. And that takes away from what we have in terms of the integrity of our environment, in terms of our community, in terms of our heritage of being a very small, quaint community. And while I know that development has to come, but what does it look like? And I would just like for the planning board to please take that into consideration, what these things look like, one development at a time. How does that change the community of Jonesville? And hopefully going forward, we can speak to this even more as more proposals are made, but that's kind of my concern, because it just doesn't look the same. And even when you bring in these developments, what do our property taxes start to look like? How does that change what we can now afford? We are certain income type families, but what if you raise our property taxes, or Wake County does, by X percentage. Can we afford that? What about homes? The rising prices of homes in the area. Now we want to build something on some property we own in the Jonesville community. What does that look like? So I think the integrity of our community is very, very important. It's very dear to us. And I would ask, again, the planning board, as you're going forward, making these considerations or hearing out different proposals, that you just keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank all the residents for coming out tonight, as we need to continue on with this one. I guess we're at a point, if there's any other, I don't know if there's any other discussion from the board, or if the floor will be open for a motion.
No discussion.
I have no more discussion.
All right, well, the floor will be open for a motion.
So hearing no further discussion, I'll make a motion to recommend to approval going to the Commissioners, Board of Commissioners for MA-22-08 Harris Creek Farms.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One opposed. Motion carries 3-1. Okay, on to the next item on the agenda. The rezoning, or REZ 23-02, the Woodliff assemblage.
Good evening. For your consideration is a rezoning request, REZ 2302, as you said, the Woodleaf assemblage. The subject property is 105.5 acres, and it is made up by 3 unaddressed properties, as well as 1321, 1421, and 1501 Rolesville Road. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning from Wake County Residential 30 to the Town of Rolesville's Residential High Conditional Zoning District and Residential Medium Conditional Zoning District. There are 12 conditions of approval that are proposed, including a concept site plan, prohibited uses, amenities, architectural commitments, and 3 affordable housing units. The particulars of the project, this concept plan shows a maximum of 255 residential units, 157 of those being single-family lots and 98 townhome lots. This is our future land use map. As you can see, the majority of the property on the west side of the Averett Young and Rolesville Road corridor is medium-density residential. That's the mustard color. And then the properties on the eastern side of that corridor, a lot of those are low-density residential. So the area that we are looking at right now with the Woodleaf assemblage is, let me get back to here for a minute, down here on the eastern side of Rolesville Road, but it is the medium-density residential category. And if we keep hearing, that is predominantly single-family detached with some townhomes, and there might be some other housing types like multifamily, as well as an occasional non-residential use. So with that medium-density land use category, this rezoning request is consistent with that because of the housing types and the density. The overall proposed density of this, I believe, is about 2.5 units per acre. In addition, the proposed vehicular circulation network that you can see in this concept plan reasonably gets you through the property connecting to the other major roadways. Actually, I'm going to go back to that. And then our greenway plan does show a greenway on the western side of Buffalo Creek. And this green line here illustrates a greenway that does match up with the town's greenway plan. A traffic impact analysis was performed by Stantec. I believe the total daily trips for this development would be 2,222. We do have Matt Peach with us this evening if you have any questions about the TIA. The applicant has prepared a presentation. I'll invite them up in just a moment to present that. Do you have any questions for staff before the applicant comes up with their presentation?
Just a question on the properties that
Sure.
the edge where Fowler is. That's not part of this work at all?
Let's go. Actually, I borrowed
this slide from the applicant's presentation. I thought they did a good job of showing what's included and what's not. The parcels outlined in yellow,
There's that little sliver right next
so
to
this,
that
this
little
is not
sliver.
included,
Okay,
yes.
so that's not part of any property that's gonna be moving or changing? Because Fowler Road right there on that corner, when you go up that hill, is a blind curve, and you add traffic in that, really greatly concerns me.
Sure.
There's already been one fatality on that corridor in the last 4 or 5 years, I think now. Thank God they cut down the woods for piping, because you can, it's, I mean, Derek, I'm sure you've driven that road, like,
yeah.
when the trees came down, I was like, oh my God, it's so much better.
Like night and day.
But right now, it's, I mean, you add the traffic, plus Callis Falls, plus the building that they're talking about, that every heading to that school. That's a lot of traffic coming up there, and Fowler. That intersection and the way it's graded today on that road is dangerous.
I
And
do
I
know
was
our,
wondering if you had that property,
if
can
something
you
can
move
happen.
Fowler or regrade that section? And I know there's some existing homes in that spot, but I'd be really cautious around any additions based on what's coming, what they're already pushing dirt on. That whole area right now is, they're putting the pipes in and everything, so they're gonna start building pretty quick.
I know our community transportation plan does recommend intersection improvements at that intersection, and I am looking to see Rolesville. I think with this project, the TIA, from what I have listed in the report, Rolesville Road, Fowler Road, no improvements are recommended there, and certainly Matt Peach may be able to comment on that.
And I'm gonna drag Matt up here in a couple
Yeah.
of minutes.
Okay.
And the other one was beyond the school, right? Because when they finished the stuff for the road improvements,
The point.
for the point, they quite frankly half-assed it. They should have extended, widened that road, because they fixed some of the road, but there is still no adequate turn lane to go into the school if you're coming off the 401 bypass. Now you add traffic going this way, which means people are gonna be sitting to try and turn left into the high school and to back up further because they can't turn in there because there's gonna be cars coming like this. So you've got two problem areas that are just getting worse and worse as we add more developments.
Sure. Would you like Matt Peach to come up and
We can
comment
do
on
the
that
development, I'll
intersection?
talk to Matt later. I saw him and I'm like,
Okay.
this is gonna be a long meeting, so I know Matt's here. I have the developer come up,
Okay.
please.
Certainly. Okay. Right.
Good evening, Chair Moss and members of the Planning Board. I'm Mark Frederick with Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein at 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is Pulte Group. I'm also joined by a few members of our development team, including Kelly Race with Pulte, and Brendy Vega and Bryant Inge with Withers Ravenel. We are calling this project Woodleaf, which is actually the surname of the family that has owned this property for quite some time. And to orient you with the site, it does include 6 parcels to the east of Rolesville Road, just south of the Fowler Road intersection. 3 of those parcels will be subdivided and retained by the owners. That's shown by the red in this aerial map. I drew this on IMAP, so it's not exactly right, but that is the general locations of those retained parcels. What is left over for the development is approximately 105 acres that we are requesting to rezone and annex into the town. From the outset of this project, we did take into account the town's guidance for this property. The primary guidance from the comprehensive plan is that future land use designation of medium-density residential, which does recommend primarily single-family residential uses with a mix of townhomes, duplexes, and multifamily in certain circumstances, with a density range from 3 to 5 units per acre. So we carried those recommendations forward as we began designing this development, arriving at the concept plan you see on the screen. The plan does include a total of 255 units. at 2.4 units per acre, with that mix of townhome lots and 2 sizes of single-family detached lots recommended by the comprehensive plan. A function of proposing this type of mix of unit mix is that the project will be split zoned. That northern portion is residential high density. That is strictly a function of what is permitted by the code. In reality, it will function as medium density across the entire site at that 2.4 units per acre. Perhaps the most defining aspect of this layout, though, is the fact that we are proposing what amounts to a conservation subdivision. This was primarily a function of the existing environmental features on the site, and our goal was to preserve as much of those natural features as we could, while also trying to achieve the density range recommended by the comprehensive plan. So by including the townhomes, we're able to reduce the footprint of the residential portion of the development, but still arrive at that density recommendation. So the way the open space is calculated is a little bit complicated as you go across the different zoning designations. But the big takeaway here is that a total of 65 acres of open space will be preserved, which is about 61% of the site. And 30 acres of that open space is on buildable land. So this isn't a case of trying to get as many units as possible. We tried to find the right balance of residential uses to achieve the density we needed, but also preserving those natural features. On the chart on this slide, you can see that in the residential high-density zoning district, which is about 41.5 acres, we're preserving 32 acres of open space, and of those 32 acres, 9.3 acres are on buildable land. For the residential medium-density zoning, which is 64 acres, we're preserving 33.1 acres, of which 21 of those acres are on buildable land. We're also planning on activating that open space with the Greenway Trail along the eastern property line. That will be a public greenway, and it's about 3,600 linear feet of greenway. That'll connect to the Rolesville Crossing Greenway to the south to really build out this public greenway system in this part of town. We're also proposing a trailhead up on the northeast portion of the site along Fowler Road. We do not have access to the community there. This will be strictly a trailhead with parking. It'll likely be publicly dedicated to the town to function as a trailhead and allow the broader citizens to come and enjoy that greenway. We do have a variety of zoning conditions. The first one is the development must conform with the concept plan. This is a condition of the zoning. So anything you see on here is a commitment. There might be slight variations as we get to the site plan, but what you see here is what you'll get. The perimeter buffers, we're meeting code requirements, and in certain places exceeding code requirements. There aren't any buffers below the 25 feet width, with many of those including a fence. The community amenities include a main amenity center central to the community. This includes a pool and cabana that'll be delivered by the 200th building permit. And then we also have a commitment to a pollinator garden, tot lot, and dog park to be delivered by the 150th building permit. We've also included architectural commitments. These are likely seem standard to you at this point, but these are to ensure that this development is of high quality and meets the town's standards, even if they're not necessarily in the UDO. We want to make sure this is a community that it's built with quality and provides benefits to the larger area. Perhaps the most meaningful commitment we have, though, is that we are proposing to include affordable housing with this project. This includes 3 townhome units to be occupied by households earning no more than 80% of the area median income. So as one of the largest home builders in the country, Pulte Group is established a program to be an industry leader in affordable housing. Through their experience, Pulte has learned that providing homes at affordable rates can be a complicated process, especially with the many different ways that municipalities are governed across the country. So they did, in an effort to streamline that process, they established the Pulte Group Affordable Homeownership Program with two major purposes. The first is to adhere to federal regulations and guidelines to establish a model to deliver affordable homes throughout the country, and two, to establish an outreach and education program so homeowners are knowledgeable and well prepared for homeownership. So therefore, Pulte's program both delivers affordable homes and also provides counseling to home buyers so they can make smart decisions with their housing and achieve the long-term benefits of homeownership. So through this commitment, ultimately 3 families in this community will benefit from this program, which we believe is a really good commitment for this community and really shows Pulte's commitment to providing affordable housing in Rolesville. So to conclude, staff did find this request to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. We did hold 2 neighborhood meetings. The primary attendance was actually the homeowner or the property owners. There really wasn't too much opposition. It was more questions about requesting information on the project. Regarding the TIA, there are a number of projects in this area that have committed to improvements along these roads. The Fowler intersection, it doesn't appear that there is any commitment to that intersection, either from this development or the other developments. The intersection at the high school, this project is committing to monitoring that intersection. And if it meets certain warrants, would install the traffic signal there. But with that, I'm available to answer any questions if you have any.
Not that I would be opposed to getting a traffic signal at the high school, I just don't think that lane can, if you're coming down from the 401 to turn onto the high school, that road is not wide enough to handle the light. So it backs up traffic further. I'll go out with you any day of the week in the school day, Matt, with you to see it in action. I have taken the Jeep off-road to get around that. It's that bad. On some mornings, it backs up past.
Oh, it goes well into the 401.
Yeah, I've seen it go up to
It
the 401.
goes all the way back to the turnaround lane farther.
At the 401 lane, the turn lane off 401 is not long enough, and the angle is horrifying because you actually can't see if they're turning, you can't see around them to see if it's okay to go or not.
Yeah.
So there's a whole host of issues on that road. Not your problem, Matt.
I think I'll let Matt speak to that one.
But now it's Matt's problem. Matt, are you committing to fixing that road for me? I honestly, there's a serious, there's 3 spots, right? That bend on Fowler Road is a dangerous road.
Yeah.
Is today, I tell my kids, fade as far as you can into the dirt because people are always crossing over that. If you're coming up and going towards the 401, people will pop out of Fowler Road pretty quickly because they can't see you coming into the last second, and you're turned like this to see over your shoulder to see it. So that whole intersection is going to get worse as Callis and the other ones get built out, and this one now. Then the high school has been a disaster since it opened, and then the 401 bypass turn is ugly.
Yes, so obviously there's a number of things in there. I was doing a little bit of searching on my phone while we were all talking, just a little bit of information on the crash in the curve that you had mentioned earlier. So there was a fatal crash on Rolesville Road in the curve mentioned. That occurred in 2018, I believe. So it has been a few years, but obviously any fatal crash we do want to pay attention to. There were, in terms of just looking on NCDOT's fatal or serious crash map, there were no fatal or serious crashes at Fowler, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an issue there. Certainly, the angle is not advantageous for folks to be looking over their shoulder, like you noted. We always try in the engineering world to kind of tee things up at a 90-degree angle just for that very reason. Because if it is a tough angle, right, and people are craning their neck one way or another, they may not look as long as they should be. They may be, selecting a gap that they probably should not otherwise. So, definitely agree, understand, and agree with where you're coming at from that regard. Regarding the high school, we've heard about the high school for a number of years now. Like you said, I think it's been something that's been an issue ever since it was opened. I guess just from my perspective, is it the fact that the traffic is getting into the high school and spilling back out onto the road that's an issue? Because the drop-off queue is extending back out onto the road?
It's both,
Yeah.
right? So even if the backup queue is not too bad, if you're turning left into the high school, you really can't go because the traffic coming towards the 401 is there, and or turning, because they essentially have a turn lane and a straight through lane.
Yeah.
So there's traffic going this car has to stop and wait, and it just backs up. And there's only room for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 cars tops to turn left before they're in the road stopped at that point. So if they had allowed a larger middle turn lane that extends further, then you're not stopping cars on the through traffic.
Yeah.
And then once that through traffic stops, it just backs all the way up. And it will back up all the way to the 401, which is approximately a mile.
Yeah, you start to see it really cascading at that point, yeah. So there's definitely a couple of things that can be done. But we always have to ask ourselves when we're doing a traffic impact analysis for a particular development, should that be the development's responsibility, right? So that's always kind of the question that we have to wrestle with, because I would love to fix every problem along every road at all times, but we kind of have to look at it from what is this individual development's impact? In that instance, regarding the improvements at the high school, because those were largely committed to by the point. And I know you have issues with how those were being constructed. That's why we were electing not to recommend improvements there. The one thing we did want to do is recommend monitoring for the traffic signal to see if that would help. But in terms of the other improvements at the high school itself, those are being handled by the point. And then, of course, there's also the Rolesville Road corridor study that's kind of looming out there as well.
Yeah, for this case, because the property is so close to the Fowler Road, it would be looking at that particular junction. Right? If there's a way to straighten it or regrade that part of the road so it's not a blind up, because you come up that hill and Fowler's right there. And there's been plenty of times where it's been close.
Yeah.
And the more traffic goes on that road.
I understand that. Where this particular development, we didn't see a whole lot of traffic coming off Fowler onto Rolesville Road. Since both of the driveways are on Rolesville Road, we mostly saw traffic kind of going north and south.
Adding a parking into the greenway, that's a public parking. So you're adding traffic that's not there today to people to park with their kids, and they'll come in or they'll drop their kids off and then go to the park. So you're adding a different time that's just not there. There's a public. It's going to be a public spot, right?
Yeah.
Public spaces.
Yep. No, that is very true. In terms of if we'd like to have the applicant commit to looking into that, that would be a question for them. I don't know if you're able to answer that.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that. It's going to be challenging because we don't control that right of way, but that's certainly something we can look at.
I don't know offhand who actually owns that particular corner on the property. I thought it was the Woodleys as well.
I don't know off the top of my head if that parcel right at the intersection is also owned by the same owners that we've been negotiating with. But again, we can take a look at that and see if there's something that we could look into.
This is a question for Matt, possibly. You mentioned monitoring the intersection at the high school to see when it would warrant a traffic signal. Was it looked at now to see how close it is to a warrant?
So we've done, we've looked at so there's 9 criteria, right, that NCDOT looks into. The vast majority are related to traffic volume, but the driver of that and what NCDOT is really looking for is sustained volume at the intersection, which just by the nature of a high school, it's kind of, you have 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. However, there is one warrant that is intended for schools. So there can be a case made that because this is a school driveway, that a traffic signal be considered. And it's possible that NCDOT would be willing to listen to that argument. I don't know if they will accept it, and I certainly don't want to speak for them. But there's also a lot of variables at play in terms of the developments coming online along this road. And, we have traffic estimates, right? And the traffic estimates are substantial for the amount of traffic that's going to be added to Rolesville Road. Whether it actually pans out that way or not is a little bit to be determined. And that's why we went with the monitoring and didn't recommend just a signal there.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Does that go in the other direction as well? Because I believe there's a warrant already existing for Mitchell Mill at some point with Callis Falls, I think was the new.
Correct. There's been a number of developments that have conditions written. Kalis Falls is one, the Wheeler Tract, and I think that one changed names, so I might be getting that one wrong, but I believe they have conditions written.
That was Roseville Crossings you're talking about.
Roseville Crossing, yes, thank you. So they have conditions written that they're supposed to be checking that intersection at certain number of units to see if it meets the criteria for a signal.
Pretty much from the bypass all the way to Mitchell Mill Road needs to be.
Study.
Yeah, it definitely needs I know they've done numerous impact studies all along the way, but the overall needs to be reviewed from A to Z, I think, so.
Yeah, and I believe that was the purpose and the intent of the corridor study. I don't have much of an update on that.
And then
not been involved.
Fowler Road in the future is supposed to be extended anyway, so that's gonna be a
When they do that, you have to cut it.
complete redesign probably, so, yeah.
I was wondering, again, I thought that property was also Woodleaf property. It's not Stallings. I don't think so. It's not Stallings, right?
It is not a Woodleaf property. This property right here that extends across Fowler Road, that's one parcel, that's a separate owner.
I think they're actually bringing
They have to bring it
Fowler
down.
down to go past that house anyway,
Once
so,
the Guns family decides to sell.
yeah,
Good luck.
right.
So dear and dear to my heart, Catlett Farm Road, I saw there was 3 improvements to that intersection because you're going to put one directly across from Catlett Farm. So what's that improvement? Is it turning it to 3 lanes? Or is it really kind of a 4-lane, left turn, right turn, and
Yeah, effectively, we were recommending a turn lane into the development, a 100-foot turn lane into the development. And then we were also recommending, because if you're going to widen the road to allow for a southbound left turn lane into the development, we recommended effectively just continuing that for another 50 feet to provide a short left turn lane into Catlett Farm Road. So it's effectively widening it to a 3-lane section for a good chunk there. And then you're actually getting really close to the widening that Kalis Falls is already doing. So I don't know exactly, we haven't done the engineering to see exactly how it would pan out, but there'll be a substantial portion of that road in that area that will be 3-lane at a certain point.
just be concerned about getting out of Catlett Farm at that point? Because it's a fairly short distance between that turn that we talked about, coming out of or coming down, and then if you've got to wait, you've got to cross traffic to get to turn left towards the town.
Yeah, you're referring to the curve.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that all going to be sidewalk on Catlett Farm, or not, sorry, Catlett Farm, but on Rolesville Road?
So along the portions that are within the development, we'll be required to improve that frontage with the sidewalk.
So on the Rolesville Road side, okay, so we're basically Rolesville Road, right, going this up in the air. Are you going to have sidewalk on that road to connect it to the bigger community? Or are they gonna have to put sidewalk on the other sides to connect? Right, how, like, to Derek's point earlier when he was having the conversation, is the desire as to how to connect this back into Rolesville, into walkable areas, and you don't have sidewalk. You'd either have sidewalk on the left side of Rolesville Road that you'd have to cross over to, or you'd have sidewalk on your side and
Up to Fowler
no,
Road.
you'd have to cross the middle
Yeah.
of Rolesville Road to get to your sidewalk and bring it up and cross over again. So how are we gonna get people back and forth from the left side of the road where there's already 700 or 800 homes going in between the two and your side of the road?
So we will have sidewalk along our frontage. I don't know if there are any proposed pedestrian crossings.
But now you've got a problem because you're not connecting the community.
Yeah, so to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, are you talking about crossing Rolesville Road
But
east
because
to
you're gonna
west
have
or west to east?
So you're gonna have a sidewalk on the right side.
Yes.
Right? And there's gonna be sidewalk on the left side, but there'll be no connection between the two. So there's no ability, and the property's keeping going, there's no connectors. Right, so how are we gonna get people across those communities and flip across the roads? Because it's a fairly busy road, and people who go out into their mailboxes or in the street take their life in their own hands just to get to the mailbox, let alone trying to cross that road.
That's a good point, and there are not pedestrian crossings proposed at this point, and there's no, at the main intersections at R2 entrances, where it does line up with roads to the west of Rolesville Road, those will be four-way intersections, but there will not be stop signs on Rolesville Road. So I think we'd have to take a look at that and see if there's something we could propose
It's gotta be
to,
something where you talk either the local landowners. the street,
yeah, for a
because-
pedestrian crossing there.
Sidewalk, no sidewalk, cross over the road to the other sidewalk. It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, and we can take a look at that and see what could be done there.
I think DOT may be an issue with crosswalks on Roseville Road.
It just, either you're gonna have to put sidewalks on both sides, because it makes some sense that distance to the high school almost, or maybe close to under the busing limit, right? So it's close enough to the high school where they won't provide a bus, maybe, right? And so now you have to get somehow to get there, you're gonna have to go Sunset Ridge,
I think it's one of those cases as more gets developed, more sidewalk gets put in.
I don't know if
Unfortunately,
they're putting sidewalk at Callis Farms or not, I don't know.
I think they are.
They are, and they're also filling the gap in between the
movie
entrance
preserve
points, because they have
and
kind of like a
Tucker
horseshoe shape. So that whole agreement was to have sidewalk and side path, I think, on the west side of the road.
Yeah, that goes all the way to Mitchell Mill.
And that is being paid for by the town.
Correct. Yeah, that section in
the
between.
gap.
Right.
That's right.
But the developer's building it because they,
That's correct.
I think Michael may have some insight for
Well,
us.
just to clarify, so the CTP prescription for this section of Rolesville Road is 2-lane with the middle third lane left turn lane, joint left turn lane, with side path on the east side, so this developer's side. And side path is a 10-foot sidewalk, so to speak, paralleling a street. Then the other side would be a sidewalk. So that's the prescription at the moment, which is not to say that development on the left side or west side might not up that to a side path as well. But, so there will be parallel pedestrian facilities. Okay. But that's what the new 2022 Greenway calls for, side path on the east side, sidewalk on the other. But
And
absolutely
will
pedestrian.
that side path extend beyond, or extend across the parcels being retained by the owners?
No, the applicant will, I'm sure to say this before I would, they cannot control property they do not control. So, no, they cannot do that. But as we saw in the last rezoning case, applicants can work to achieve that as a plus to their rezoning. So I would just leave it at that. But they will absolutely have to do full frontage improvements along all of their road frontage with Rolesville, which would be side path in this case.
What about the existing spaces that are being retained by the homeowner?
They're not gonna have
I'll let them speak to that, but if it's not in color on this drawing, it's not there at development time's responsibility, yeah.
I understand, but have you reached the agreement to put that side path?
So currently, there will be those gaps in the side path, but again, that's something we can take a look at and see if it would be possible to to complete those gaps.
Really weird to have a side path and then go around these houses and then side.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the points that would be helpful to have you guys explore is to fill that gap in between the kind of where the RMCZ is right now on this drawing, and also extending all the way up to Fowler Road. The reason why I say that, and I know this is going to sound bad because it sounds like I'm a townhome hater, but I'm not. I'm really not. But I'm just, like I said earlier tonight, I know what the town board has been doing. And the town board does not like townhomes outside of the walkable area. The walkable area is literally at the corner of Fowler Road and Rolesville Road. So you're like 500 feet away. So I will say this very clearly. I really like this project. I really, really do. So much about it I like. I like that you're not making use of every single piece of land like so many other developers come in here and do. I really recognize that, and I appreciate that. I recognize the greenway, which I love. I love the parking. Everything you've done with this is absolutely spot on. The only two criticisms I have that are consistent with our town board is the townhomes this far out and those two gaps and I know they're not your properties, and I know that that's a challenge, and I know you can't control that, but having some sort of conversation with those owners to see if you can continue that from the southern part of your property straight up to Fowler Road. Because then when you get to that intersection, which is most likely going to be controlled, then you have those crosswalks that are there. Then your entire community becomes walkable because you are connected to that intersection. That's just the reality of it. And I know that's a big challenge because you don't own those properties, but that's what you're going to face with the town board.
2 miles, exactly, from that first entrance to
Yeah.
Rolesville.
And I know it makes me really look bad to be saying this, 2 projects in a row, but just across the street from this is Tucker Wilkins, and they're all single family, and they had the same opportunity as everybody else, and that becomes another issue when you have how many townhomes, and I think your report actually broke this out. It broke out which communities are near you and how many are single family and how many are townhomes. There's a lot of townhomes going in there, and that's part of what created a lot of traffic issues and a lot of traffic concerns. And if you paid attention to a lot of the town board meetings, a lot of those commissioners look back at that in hindsight and like, wow, we kind of messed up by putting in so many townhomes in those communities, especially in a rural farming community. So I would, if this was like all single family, you would have me right away. Even without the breaks and the stuff, and the breaks and the greenways and the sidewalks, that would still be something that I would be interested in you guys pursuing. I just get worried. There's no retail commercial space out there yet. There's nowhere for all of these people to do anything, and crossing the bypass, especially as a pedestrian, I don't know if any of you have done it yet. I've done it 4 times. It's ridiculous. It is Frogger. There's nothing commercial on this side of the bypass on Rolesville Road. And that makes everybody have to go all the way up there. And that's just a lot more traffic with the school. And I know it is small, and I do like that you have a greater percentage of single family versus townhomes, because the other project was the flip. So I'm really struggling with really getting in on this one. I seriously am. I'm really that close. That's just those are my 2 biggest concerns, but I absolutely love everything else you're doing with it. I really, really do.
If you're in this area and you use Waze or one of the Google Maps, it actually will tell you to take Mitchell Mill rather than go to the bypass in the morning because it's faster.
Yeah. My son does that. He goes the back. He doesn't even go 401 anymore.
It used to be when, like, my son would come out of high school, he, instead of turning left because it was impossible to get out, he would turn right, go up the road, come back around the backside, and come to our house because it was safer and actually easier to do.
There's been times when, and this is crazy, I go all the way up to Pulley Town Road, come down Quarry Road, just to get into the high school from the north side of Quarry Road because it's so horribly backed up around that section. And I know that's not your property, but it still is kind of part of that whole big picture when you add more density. That's just my big concern. I would love to see you match what Tucker Wilkins is doing. That property is a really good project. They stuck with single-family homes, and I think particularly because of how much green space you're saving, I think your single-family homes would do much better and be a much richer community rather than having the townhomes in there.
Question on I know you have how many houses per acre you're looking at to meet the requirement, but that's all the fun math that
Yeah.
we talk about. What do you think is the minimum lot size you're gonna be having? I know you don't have a plot, but
So the townhomes, the interior units are 22 feet wide. The end units are 26 feet wide. I do not know the depth, though. The depth of the townhome units?
I think the lots are about 100 feet deep for the town.
for the houses themselves.
The single-family detached?
Yeah.
I believe we have two different.
Yeah, we've got a 41-foot wide lot and a 51-foot wide lot. And those are the yellow and the orange mixed throughout that southern portion of the property.
I just know there's been a concern from homeowners in the area just because of the size of the existing homes and lots.
41 by 1.
Quite some time has been fairly wide open, even on the developed areas like Catlett Farms and Emily Lane, other ones, Sunset, so larger lots, right? And then all of a sudden, if you have the smaller homes, it really does change that look and feel again. So I wonder if there's some sort of transitional density.
Yeah, and we understand that, and we appreciate all the comments. We are aware of the recent discussion by the town board of the placement of townhomes throughout town. What I think where we got caught in the middle of this is that I don't think this was a discussion that I was aware of, or that I don't think was happening when we started with this case. So I think we're a little caught in the middle on trying to meet the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, which really does recommend 3 to 5 units per acre with a mix of those housing types. And then the other piece of this, especially with lot sizes, well, there's two pieces. There's the conservation subdivision. We really wanted to shrink our footprint that we'd have to disturb and preserve as much as we can of those natural features. So I think a result of that is the smaller lots. And then the other piece to that is affordability. Pulte Group is very committed to providing homes and home choices that are affordable to residents. We did commit to those 3 designated affordable units, but I think overall, with the smaller lots, it just naturally creates more affordable housing.
Yeah, and like I said, I even the conservation part, these are all things that in the previous meeting with the other project that was in here, these are all points that I made to them that I suggested. And you have all of those incorporated, that's why I'm saying I like the project because of all that stuff that you've put into it. I just know you might be in for a little bit of a struggle with the town board when it comes to townhomes, given that location. But like I said, everything else you've done, I think, has a very good potential of offsetting that. I think I had one other question. My other suggestion was going to be when you talked about affordable housing, and I could tell you already have a program in place because of the way you described it, and it's wonderful that you bring that kind of as, inherently with your project. Some of the things, one of the board members on the town board is really a veterans-focused person. So one of the things you might consider is looking at what this cost is that you kind of have associated with this project. I'm just going to say, let's say it's $100,000. I know it's not, but let's just say that that's what it amounts to. You might want to come up with another $100,000 alternative that might be specific to veterans, and then let the town board pick which one they prefer, just so that you have a little bit of a variety of what you're offering in that respect, because the veteran, Mr. Alston, might say, it's okay, yeah, let's go that way because I've got so many other projects that are doing it for veterans. But giving them an alternative, I think, would be helpful in your next step. for that
Yeah,
particular
thank
piece.
you. We appreciate that comment. We'll definitely look into something.
Just a side comment, I saw that there's no radio tower as one of the conditions. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to build, somebody's gonna have to build one out there, because your density is getting high enough to saturate the current bandwidth for many of your telecom or carriers, because the only carrier towers are in Rolesville, and if you're using 5G, it's a 2-mile limit, which means you're at the high school and you're done. But more of a commentary to future planning, somebody's gonna have to build one sooner or later.
Understood. Hopefully it's built in an appropriate location.
Yeah. It's not my backyard.
All right. Anyone have any other questions for the attorney?
No.
All right, was anyone else that would like to speak on this subdivision?
Actually, sorry, I just remembered it. Sorry, can I grab you one more question? The only other concern that I had noted on here is the everything that's along Rolesville Road. You've got the road, sidewalk, and side path. And then what kind of buffer is going to be behind? Because these are all houses that are going to be backed up. It's going to be backyards facing Rolesville Road. So is there going to be a berm? Is there going to be a fence? Or what kind of buffer is going to be there? Because especially with townhomes, with that much more concentrated group of people, and usually you have kids more likely to be in townhomes, I'm really kind of concerned about how close they are to that high-speed road and what kind of danger that might pose for residents that are living in that area.
Yeah, so it is a 50-foot streetscape adjacent to the residential high-density district, so along those townhomes. And then it's a 30-foot streetscape buffer along the rest of the project. I don't know off the top of my head if that includes a berm or if it's just landscaping. But
can't remember
those are
either.
the widths there.
Yeah, I would suggest some sort of fencing on that corner, just for safety, because
Yeah,
that's the blind curve.
yep.
Something comes around
Along
that corner.
From the beginning of the townhomes at the northern, all the way down to the first property break.
Yeah, plus you're gonna have trust me on this one, the deer love coming out on that corner.
Yep.
And if you change their habits, which you'll do with this, you're gonna have some fun.
I do know there's a fence in the perimeter buffers, and maybe, Brian, do you know if the streetscape has a fence?
Yeah, I can't
Brandy?
recall.
It does not? Okay, so it's just landscaping, but yeah, we can take a look at what we could do there.
Yeah, because I mean, I know most townhomes usually just have that kind of silly fence, like half fence or whatever that goes back, but something along the back side of that landscaping, I think would really help on a number, whether it's deer, whether it's kids, or whether it's drunk drivers coming around the turn too fast and,
Targeted.
and just coming right into somebody's backyard. That's the only worry I have with properties backing up to Rolesville Road.
And I like it because, again, the comments in the area from the other landowners who own the property in those areas, always the density of the houses compared to where they're at. I mean, some folks have like gardens bigger than 2 acres, right? So they're big, wide open. If at least there's some sort of berm or it keeps a little bit of the look and feel of that area better.
Right.
All right. Anyone else have any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on this? All right. Any discussion from the board?
Anybody on the
Anyone from the public want to speak? All right. Any other discussion from the board?
Nope, no more.
All right. The floor is open for a motion.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval with mention of consistency with the comprehensive plan to the Town Board of Commissioners of REZ-23-02 Woodleaf Assemblage.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
second?
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now on to the first one, which is now last. REZ 23-06, 4124 Burlington Mills Road.
Yes. Thank you.
Don't we have to
Commissioner
table that
Moss.
because we don't have a quorum?
No, you have a quorum because you have
No, but I think we,
6 total and there's 3, so that's because
Yep.
you have.
So
On behalf, so
I think-
I will have to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman, because this is a fire department property, and being the fire chief, I will have to recuse myself.
all right. Do we need to vote on him recusing, or is he just?
do not.
All right, thank you. And I would like to just put it out that I did survey this property in 2016, I believe, but I'm not currently working on the project, so my name may come up in some older documentation, but I'm not currently working on this project.
And so just real quickly for the future, the board currently has 5 members, we've had a resignation and we have an absence. So we have 1 vacancy, which doesn't count. So the board has 5 members, 4 in attendance, which was your quorum. Well, I'm sorry, you had 4 in attendance, which is where you start. You've had 1 recusal. You now have 3 out of 5 of your total board, which is still a quorum.
More. We have 2 absences this evening. Steve and Tisha are both absent, and then,
That's right.
Okay, so you have, let's do the math again. You have 6 active seats.
And
You
chair.
have 1 absence, and you have 1 recusal, but you already had a quorum, and so you have 3 people eligible to vote, and for this to pass, 2 of the 3 would need to vote yes. Unlike a quasi judicial matter, it's just those who are qualified and present.
All right,
Fair enough.
fair enough.
I guess we proceed.
Thank you.
Sure.
On to you, Meredith.
It's all about subtraction. Bad at elementary school math.
the subject property is located at 4124 Burlington Mills Road. It's almost 3.5 acres in size. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning from residential low to general industrial conditional zoning district. The proposed condition of approval is to limit the uses to 1 public safety facility and 2 warehousing. Our future land use map designates this property as medium-density residential, and we've heard that throughout this evening, so you know it's predominantly single-family with some other housing types and an occasional non-residential use. So this rezoning request is not consistent with Rolesville's comprehensive plan because typically general industrial zoning is not appropriate next to a residential medium district, which Pierce Farm, also previously known as Tom's Creek, was recently approved. So this is adjacent to that as well as to single-family residences. So without any details or conditions, like a site concept plan, there's really no information to gauge the possible impacts of the development. On the other hand, despite the inconsistent nature of this request, the following should be considered. General industrial next to a residential district does require a type 4 perimeter buffer. A type 4 perimeter buffer is 50 feet wide, has quite a bit of landscaping in it, including a berm and a wall. So, 50 feet of space would buffer between a general industrial use and the residential use with, like I said, the landscaping, the berm, and the wall. And public safety facilities generally function as community facilities, although a warehouse might be more wide-ranging. So you can see 2 different sides of this case with the general industrial district. So that concludes staff's presentation. I know applicant is present this evening. I do not know if they wish to speak or not, or I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Would the applicant like to speak? Nope. Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I do not.
No questions for the applicant, but I think the reason we're doing this is because of the LDO doesn't include fire department or public use in the zone that we're in. Is that something we want to consider?
It has to do, it's the warehousing use. I know the fire department is interested in creating a storage facility for one of their fire trucks. So a storage facility would fall under a warehousing use. That's why the use is being limited to public safety facility or warehousing.
So this isn't necessarily a firehouse.
It absolutely could be in the future. We don't know. It's been shared with me, there's some interest in using this as a storage type project. But again, we have no concept plan, just the request to go to general industrial, limiting the use to public safety facility and warehousing.
And being, this is a conditional zoning request, correct? So we can restrict it to only fire department uses, or what kind of restrictions
The
can we?
applicant, I'll go back to this so we can see. The applicant has offered the condition of limiting the use to public safety facility and warehousing.
Public safety facility could be ambulance, fire.
Sure. Police.
We could, if warehousing is a concern, could we limit it to warehousing for the use of the public service facilities to?
That's,
Fine question.
I would think.
I mean, I don't think
Sure.
with the ownership of the property, they're going to go out and rent it out to a factory to store things.
Right.
I mean, if the fire department would be willing to do that, to limit it to only fire department, I think that may ease any concerns
Warehousing
of.
and storage for public safety related equipment, is that?
Yeah, I think that may ease any concerns that commissioners or any other public may have about what type of warehousing would be.
Yeah, so I can address that, like, let's say, because we've had this property since 2016, and Donnie Lawrence, Fire Chief, Rolesville Fire Department. Yeah, so this property we've owned since 2016. We've had, I think most of you have seen the sign up there for future fire station. We have the renderings and concept plans of a fire station, and now to get this, we have to get this from a residential to a general industrial per the new LDOs. The old UDOs was a little different for us, but that's what the request is, to get this into a general industrial with the conditional zonings where we will be able to build a fire station and be able to build a warehouse, or we were saying garage, but it has to be warehouse under LDO, but in order to store some fire trucks.
But if we just made the condition public safety facility because it's used to store or warehouse public safety equipment, would it qualify?
Right, we were looking for the public safety facility and the warehouse, if that way we could build, I could just refer to staff, we could build either or first. If we went just public safety, we'd have to build the fire station before we could build
Have
the
to do
garage.
fire station
Yeah.
if you do public safety.
So this will give us the option to go either way.
And like I say, the only concerns I could foresee anybody having would be just the general warehousing. That's why I was thinking if we could limit it to the warehousing for fire equipment.
Yeah, and that's
or
fine.
for
I think
public
that's
safety
what we put in
equipment,
here,
that would
proposed
clear up
permitted
things
use.
from anybody else, I think.
On our application was just put in the proposed conditions will be permitted uses are for public safety facility, and it'd be only a public safety facility. I mean, you couldn't build a garage on there and rent it to somebody to put
Yeah.
a transmission
To work
shop.
on cars, yes, exactly.
So I'm thinking hard on this.
Okay.
So the town doesn't have the authority to regulate in a zoning condition ownership. We do have the power to regulate uses and limit the use. So if you were to rezone the site to general industrial, you then could limit the types of warehousing that are appropriate. So essentially adjectives for warehousing. And staff would want to have some time to think about whether those adjectives are clear so that they know whether it fits in the box or not. Okay? So if it were public safety warehousing, I'm not sure what that means, and we'd want to think about what that means. It would not mean that it has to be stuff stored by the fire department or by a public entity. It could be a private supplier of police cars, and they would store all their private police cars there before they sell them to a public agency. Does that make sense? So that then leads to the next question, which is sort of because I'm on the outside looking in and I didn't know about this pending case before I read it this afternoon. Normally this board and the town board does not look at conditional zoning cases until and unless there's a plan. So what would this look like? How would it be situated on the site to see what sort of conditions are appropriate for that sort of use? That is just the town's custom and practice since we went to conditional zoning. Before that, this would have come through a special use permit, and it definitely would have had a plan. So the applicant may have some answers to why they're kind of going in a different order.
You mentioned you had a plan though, right?
We have a rendering that's mounted, that's posted on.
Just the one that's on the
been over
sign?
there for 5 years probably.
Yeah, yeah,
We've
yeah.
had the property 7 years, but yeah. So there's a rendering of the future fire station that would be put on that, and.
But not of the warehouse that might.
Warehouse, no, it was just a thought of the warehouse gonna be like a 50 by 50
Pole building, steel building.
pole barn, yeah, something like that. So,
Would it always be town-owned now that the fire department's being,
this is Rolesville Rural Fire Department Incorporated, separate from the town.
so, okay,
The fire department is not part of the.
not
town.
yet, right? But it's still in that process, right?
There's discussions underway.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Well, I think it's known that there's going to be a need for a fire station out in that area with the growth that's coming in.
Yeah,
And,
approximately with the new Pierce Farms being approved, this area, this station would serve a little over 900 homes, around I think it's 960 or something like that in that area. 'Cause we have Drayton Reserve, Stonewater, Heritage, Regency at Heritage, and then Pierce Farms, as well as other properties going in.
Let me throw out as another possibility of concern for the applicant. If the merger were to go through and this became one of the sites that was retained by the entity, by the nonprofit entity, is that a possibility?
This could be a possibility, yes.
At which point it wouldn't be a public safety facility anymore. It would be a private foundation facility.
Possibility.
And you would all of a sudden have run into your own rezoning by accident.
Yeah.
May I speak?
Please, Mr. Pierce.
Who are you?
Who are you, name?
We don't have much of an audience anymore.
Say your name. Go ahead and say your name for.
Founding Boyle Planning Board.
I'm Frank Pierce. I'm Secretary of Rolesville, Secretary of Treasury to the Rolesville Rural Fire Department Incorporated. The intent, when we bought this property in 2016, was to be providing a place for a fire station to be built to serve this part of our district, period. No if, and buts about it. Now, had to address the possibility of the fire department not selling it or transferred it to the town. That would not be consistent with what we intended the property to be used for. If and when the time arrives for this property to be needed by the town of Rolesville, if in fact it was not transferred, then we would be certainly willing and put it in writing if necessary that we would transfer it to the town of Rolesville. Is that clarified?
Mr. Pierce, this is entirely the department's application. I was just throwing it out there as that could have been an unintended problem for the department / foundation / corporation if in fact the foundation were to retain it and want to use it, for example, to store historic trucks. At that point, it would be a private antique vehicle warehouse. It wouldn't be a public safety warehouse. Does that make sense?
Fire station would have been built by that time.
If, as Chief Lawrence said, that was the direction the board went, that hasn't happened. I'm thinking about hypotheticals of something that would leave us in a tough spot.
In the discussions and the resolution that we have, the resolution actually states when the fire station will be built, this property will go, if the town and the fire department merge, that property will go to the town at that time, as Mr. Pierce just stated. So
And
I
so
think that would resolve that.
And so it's likely now that the department wants to build prior to the merger, is that correct?
That's a possibility for, if, like I said, if we can build a garage or a storage or a warehouse, as it's being called in this application, and yes, we would maybe look at doing that down the road prior to the fire station being built. So we're still working with the town and county on money for bricks and mortar for these properties, and as well as 2 other properties that we have.
Well, I'll leave it to the board that there's not a legal problem with restraining the use of warehousing to a particular sort. Cell phone equipment warehousing would be fine.
That's what I'm thinking of, just like vehicle storage is kind of what where I'm leaning, is vehicle storage, and I would make sure not maintenance maybe, I don't know, but vehicle storage.
That's going to give you a problem maybe with that's going to give you a challenge with the other use that they want for the site, though.
The main purpose of the site is for a fire station, which will have to be, we have to get it out of residential and get it into general.
Right, I thought
industrial now with the LDO.
I thought we were looking for adjectives for the word warehouse.
Correct, but if vehicle maintenance were prohibited on the site, I think that's going to be a problem for the fire department.
Well, right, I was more specifically talking about for just the building. Like, is the maintenance, is the building, aside from storing, is it also intended to be used as a facility for maintenance for the vehicles? Or that would
Contract all of our repairs and work is done by certified fire.
Right.
Service station, not, there'll be no work or, this
Right.
won't be a garage or a.
There's no lift or yeah, right. It's not like the Public Works building that has those kinds of,
Right.
Another thing I'd like to clarify, at the present time, we are under the jurisdiction of Wake County,
right.
far as water and sewer goes. And we have obtained a permit to build a fire station and or a storage facility, call it whatever you want to, on this lot. We have already had it, there's already a septic system in place and there's already a well in place. And all we're trying to do is utilize what we have available.
You could just say warehouse limited to public safety vehicle storage. And the industrial would cover the fire departments. Now, again, to your point, if some police car manufacturer came along and said, our property, or you sold it for whatever reason, yeah, it could be
Unless you
used for that.
specify
But it'd be very
Rolesville.
specific. It would have
Unless
to be
you
either
spell it.
fire trucks, police cars, or ambulances.
And then if they did, something did come and they sell it later, a new buyer would just have to come and get a rezoning at that point in time.
Or they'd be limited to
Who they could sell
storing
it to.
police, vehicles. Public safety would be fire, police, and ambulance, basically. So
Yep.
it would have to be a very specific company, which is a low risk.
Yep.
Would we want to say Rolesville specifically? So that there isn't the caveat that someone who wants to store Wake County or Raleigh City police vehicles, I mean, is that going too far?
I don't think it's that necessary.
Okay.
I personally don't think so either. I think they've got a pretty good intended use for it. And-
I totally agree. I'm just throwing it out there.
By a guy's named Donnie.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or discussions?
Just a quick clarification, the LDO use table shows public safety facility being allowed in general commercial and every other non-residential or mixed-use district going away from residential. Just that warehousing storage piece is the reason they have to ask for the GI.
Okay.
Would at some point, if they put in the fire department, would they rezone it to get rid of the warehousing part of that?
No, public safety facilities allowed And,
No, I understand
yeah,
that,
yeah,
but-
so they
but-
wouldn't need to.
Again, I go 5,000 years in the future and they say we need a bigger fire department somewhere else. We're gonna sell this property. We no longer need it. Warehouse is still an option. Or industrial is an option, but it's limited, so they'd have to come back and beg for, to get out of that.
Is our Public Works facility a public facility or is it a warehousing facility? Public Works.
Isn't that zone GI? Yeah,
It occurs to me that before I saw the word warehousing up there, I would think that a place where I stored fire trucks or police cars for my police department or my fire department would be a public safety facility. Does public safety facility not reach far enough to be where I put the fire truck?
So I think to the Public Works question, it's use, not structure, not the building, the type of construction building. And, yeah.
Right.
And so that fell under government facility.
So I'll go back to the same question. Isn't everything that we've heard today that the department wants to do something that would be a public safety facility, and the word warehousing could just not be there?
The conversation between staff and the applicants were all about principal uses and accessory uses, and how if there were a proper fire station, that would be the public safety facility, and then all the warehouses they wish to build would be accessory structures to the principal structure, or accessory uses to the principal use of the public facility. But leading with a storage building.
Right, I think of warehouses,
Accessory
I'm
use to-
a dummy. I think of warehouses as being places where I store inventory and I do shipping and receiving and I move logistics, but none of those things are being proposed. It's just where we're going to park the truck. That sounds like a public safety facility.
Well, I think staff went down the road of that. Sounds like it's tied to the property owner and the entity, not
The land.
a land use, and not the way that the zoning uses are defined in the LDO. And then the accessory use, principal use, or accessory building, principal building came into play. But the idea of how to condition the warehouse use to get it down to where everybody's comfortable, that it pretty much only fits the bill for this applicant, might be the sweet spot of just, again, adjectives or specific words with council's fine with it. Comfortable feeling that it's not hemming in
too. I'm good with
a property owner.
specifying
Public
public safety vehicles. Public safety vehicle warehouse,
Storage.
storage.
I think warehouse is the permitted use, right?
That's the-
that's the
that's the word in
permitted
the-
use statement.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion?
No discussion.
Floor is open for a motion.
Return Derek.
It's down to one.
Yeah. I was actually just looking in the packet for where that thing is, but I'll go ahead and take a stab at it at ad hoc. So I'll make a motion to accept the zoning request for REZ 2306-4124 Burlington Mills Road with the additional language of public safety warehouse.
Vehicle warehouse.
Public safety vehicle warehouse. Thank you.
All right.
Does that work for the applicant? The applicant needs to consent to that. Is that okay?
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passed. All right. All right. Mr. Pierce, we thank you for your patience. We were trying to get that one more board member, but we do appreciate your patience, having to bump you to the end.
Well, I've been there, done that.
48 years worth of things.
Yeah.
And what Mr. Pierce has failed to mention is that he is also now the newest member of the Rolesville Board of Adjustment.
Yeah.
So
Congratulations.
And we're glad to have him back. All right.
Good to see all y'all again. I'm gonna depart.
Thank you, Frank.
Good night. Drive carefully.
On the communications, planning director's report.
Yes. Mentioned, we've had a request for our vice chair to resign, and I know there's something, okay, just wanted to share that. I've only shared it with Chair Moss. And Commissioner Sneed is very excited about joining us as the Planning Board liaison from the town board. She was attending the Mayor's Association dinner this evening, but looks forward to being at the next meeting. And as far as updating on our last meeting in October, we met and we talked about the Appearance Commission. And I did take that, your recommendation of having a joint work session as a possibility to the town board. And they liked that idea, and it's on my to-do list to schedule that as a topic for a joint work session. So that'll be coming in the new year.
All right.
And we also received, oh, thanks. I was going to say, we also were getting a lot of resignations. Received a resignation from our development support specialist, Jordan Prince.
Oh.
And we'll be getting that job ad up very soon. So we hope to get someone in as quickly as possible because that's an important job in our department. And our staff has been discussing making changes to the development report. We would like to switch to a quarterly report. Did I get that one right? Or was it half a year? Annual, half year. Okay, we talked about quarterly. We, just the monthly reports with a few numbers, we don't think that was doing a lot for our audience, and but wanted to get your thoughts and feedback on us doing a report twice a year, but with a lot more oomph to it. Yeah, you got it. That's it.
I think one thing personally would help me out when you do that development report around like here's all the developments that are in process, right? Is having that in a map. Just color that little spot and say, here's 500 homes, 200 townhomes, completed,
Pictures.
Blah. Just from a standpoint where you can kind of map out and go, wow, there's a whole bunch going on in this whole corridor, or a whole bunch going on in this corridor, or this corridor is done, right, type of thing. Just from a visual standpoint,
Sure.
it helps puts it together a little bit.
Good idea.
Okay. I personally think, every 6 months or so would be sufficient.
comprehensive.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you would get the impact of it a little more.
Sure. Great. Thank you. That is all I had.
All right.
Do you think the building permits have dropped since the interest rates have gone up, or it seems like they're building everywhere, but I'm just
Not
curious.
a big drop.
Not much.
They have in some areas.
Yeah, I would say, Rolesville's always booming.
Yeah, we're
but yeah.
still
Inventory is
seeing good
still
numbers.
short.
Yeah, we're still not too far off from the previous year when we have looked at the numbers.
Right. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Town attorney's report.
Hey there, real quick. Cell tower restrictions in conditional zoning cases. When you see those, there's a special meeting that we have when you decide to be a land use lawyer, where the first thing you learn is that on all of your land use cases that you submit for a conditional zoning, you have to add to the top, eliminate cell towers and eliminate helipads. You have no intention of ever putting those two things on there, but most towns require that you list at least one condition, so you just throw them out there so it qualifies as a complete application. So that's some of what you're seeing. So take that for what it's worth. The other piece is the planning board, and I know you guys have plenty to do, could be taking up the consideration of some rules of procedure for how meetings are conducted, and maybe move your meetings along in a more predictable way and in a faster way. Take a look at some other towns in Wake County and around the Triangle where the applicant has 10 minutes. The applicant has 7 minutes. Speakers have 3 minutes, and all the speakers together for those who are not the applicant are 10 minutes each side, 20 minutes on each side. And at that point, you just take it back as a board so that you can ask questions. Otherwise, you tend to get a lot of repetition of the same ideas the board has had the package in advance anyway, and you have prepared, and it's probably inefficient. You had 90-plus minutes on that first case. You had 45 minutes on the second case, and there was no opposition. That's a long time for a case. And as Rolesville gets bigger, and if interest rates can't kill us, which they apparently can't, Raleigh will have 15 cases on their planning board. Can you imagine they all took 90 minutes, or any of them took 90 minutes? It becomes a 24-hour venture. And so the board has adopted them. The town board has adopted a 3-minute limit. Derek, I think it has worked reasonably well.
Yeah,
I haven't found a whole lot of angst
Called
over
on
that.
it several times.
Some communities allow you to combine your time, which has worked really well for towns that have a lot of folks who are regular speakers. So you just let one spokesman speak, and if one spokesman speaks, they can have the whole 9 or 10 minutes for themselves. So that's something for the board to consider. You have the authority under the statute to adopt bylaws. In Rolesville, they have to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. Parks and Rec Advisory Board has done that. But it's something that you might want to take a look at.
I assumed they were in place here, to be honest with you.
Is that something that staff could provide, the recommendations, I guess? That we
I can send you something from the School of Government with some sort of best practice tips that they have, and then every town has to decide. Rolesville's super egalitarian town hall, practically New England style. So if you were to crack down like Cary, there could be riots, right? I mean, you just wouldn't be able to do that. Pick your favorite 3 people in the room, let them speak, and everybody else has to applaud. They can't come up and speak.
Right.
Like, that would be tough. But it may be something to look at.
So if you send those, we would review them, either approve or deny. If we approve them, it has to go to the town board for final approval?
They do. The board has mentioned on the previous board that they did want to absolutely review it, and that's the way the statute's written. It says that appointed boards may adopt their bylaws, well, if the town board lets them, which whatever that authority means. So take that for what it's worth. And the final thing before we go, staff, particularly, the 3 staff members that you see here, we're working hard to come up with some standardized zoning conditions so that on each case where the intent is pretty much to say the same thing, the condition says the same thing. Okay. So the person who wants to incorporate the concept plan, the language would be the same right at the top on each one, so that the board, this planning board particularly, would be able to see where someone tries to deviate. Also with affordable housing, there could be 3 or 4 different options. Homes for Heroes is not even the current name of any nonprofit that's functioning in the state of North Carolina, but for some reason it keeps popping up. It's because land use lawyers like me, we copy the cases that got approved in the past. So that's why you keep seeing it. Anyway, that's way longer than I wanted to talk, but
Well, I appreciate it.
I don't get to see you guys that often anymore, so.
I think we would like to see, get an email or something on that, some kind of standards of operating procedures for the meeting.
Yep, and Shelley you can even put it down at the bottom of the agenda that's outside, and you'll be surprised. People immediately sign up everyone has to sign up before the meeting. They'll start doing it, and you'll have some ideas to who wants to speak, so you can get a sense as to how strict you need to be on the 3 minutes. We have Dan Alston with a stopwatch sitting in Derek's spot. Well, now he's moved over one. It's to a certain extent, folks kind of like to have predictable rules for these sort of things. Mm-hmm. Yep, I can send you that.
All right, thank you.
I have 2 things I would like to share, though, if you don't mind.
All right.
Mainly, because we had both Harris Creek Farm and Woodleaf Assemblage tonight, and I voted differently on both of those properties or of those projects, I do want, for the sake of the record, to clarify why, because I know there's probably people that will watch this or see this and kind of call me out on this. But, with Woodleaf Assemblage, and I made all these points throughout the presentation, but I wanted to summarize them here at the end. that Woodledge assemblage is not encroaching on a rural community and doesn't have the same kind of threat to the well water and the livelihood of a rural community as Harris Creek Farms does. I also noted that with Woodleaf assemblage, they are not using every square inch of developable land, and they're using a lot of the natural resources to enhance that community. The single-family units outweigh the number of townhomes, which I think is favorable, particularly in that area. The Woodleaf assemblage property did separate the public parking at the trailhead of the greenway. And again, to the point I made throughout the night, that was important to separate the public entity pieces from the private entities. So that was one of those factors. And again, because of the surrounding developments that have been approved and the precedent that's already been set by the town of Rolesville, the property for Woodleaf assemblage is of the like and kind of the properties around it being developed. So for whatever it's worth, that's kind of where I just want people to understand, whether it's you or the other people out here, why there's a big difference between those two projects as I reviewed them.
All right.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention is kind of in lieu of all of that, I wonder how or what we would go about if would we ask the town commissioners to revisit the way the land use map looks, or do we do that as a planning board, or what? Because I'm kind of concerned about how some of the outlying properties are residential medium versus residential low as far as like how they match up with everything.
We have a comprehensive plan update budgeted, and we are supposed to get started on it the beginning of 2024.
Okay.
And that, a big piece of the comp plan update will be that future land
That
use map.
evaluation?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that plan was done in 2017. Good rule of thumb is to update it every 5 years and do a major overhaul every 10 years. And if you're a faster growing community, you can update it more often. So it's
Okay.
absolutely due for an update.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously I've only been here this whole calendar year, right? But I've been in Parks and Recreation, I've gone to a lot of board meetings, and you can tell there's always a lot of discrepancy between the way this board looks at things and the way the town board looks at things. And I think a lot of that, from at least my perspective, seems to come from that zoning. And so I just feel like it feels a little awkward, you know what I mean, to feel like you're not sure whether the town's going to be in line with us or whether we're in line with the town. And I think having that zoning represent what everybody agrees upon is going to be helpful so that everybody can make decisions based on that. So that's kind of.
The difference I bring in that space is there's several of us that live in the ETJ versus the town, right? Because I have no vote of anybody in the commissioners.
Right.
So I don't have a say actually of who, if I disagree with one of the commissioners, I can't vote them out, which is the only voice I have. So my voice is to bring the folks that, not just my opinions, but the people that live in my ETJ as well,
Right.
my neighbors, in those particular pieces. And a lot of times they will not agree with the board, right? But we have no say in that place. You heard the folks over at Jonesville, right?
Right.
Very similar. The Stallings were here.
Right.
A lot of those folks have a different opinion. Like, they would like to keep it rural, and they understand.
Right.
But the town wants to grow, so there's a conflicting opinion. So I bring their opinion to the meeting, not necessarily the town, because they need to hear it.
And that's what I try to do as well, and I think that's what's important. And that might not be an issue for you soon because there's a House bill out there to eliminate all ETJs anyway, so not that that helps any, but that becomes part of another issue.
It didn't pass.
It didn't pass? I know it went through 3 readings though, right? Yeah. But anyway, those are just some closing thoughts of mine.
Anyone else have anything else? I'd just like to wish everyone a happy holiday and safe travels if you're on the road for the Christmas and New Year season.
Same to you.
Motion to adjourn.
I didn't even wait.
Motion second. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. We're adjourned.